It was at Mohi, after the battle, Zheng purred low and soft, her voice cupping each word with nostalgic affection. Another war story? Rain asked, not unappreciative. The battle had been bloody, Mongol and Magyar alike lay dead in their thousands, and victory was narrow. Batu was incompetent, the warriors had nearly broken, they could not deal with the Magyar crossbows, and it was only Subutai's bravery that rallied them and shattered the Magyar camp in the end. But this is not the story of that battle. I care nothing for great battles. Things such as us do not make a difference on that scale, amid hundreds of thousands of monkeys butchering each other. It was after. After the blood, after the Magyar had fled and the warriors plundered, it was then, in the time for crows and starving dogs. Zheng lowered her voice to a whisper. It was there I first met the vampire. Over on the bed, I stifled a gasp behind a raised hand. Zheng's eyes slid to me, a faint dark smile playing across her lips, enjoying my unguarded reaction. I blushed. She'd crafted that moment to seize my heart. Last I checked, Evie's pretty sure vampires don't exist, Rain said. Does your mage know every corner of the world, Yashu? Zheng asked. Does she disprove the gods themselves with lack of knowledge? I want to hear about the vampire, I said out loud. Please. Hey, sorry, my bad, Rain said, and I blinked in surprise at the speed and ease of her apology. It's your tale. Go ahead. What's a real vampire like? Glorious. Zheng grinned with fierce love at the memory. She lingered with the carrion things, but she was no scavenger. She had moved in neither army's shadow. She had fought for the Magyar, mounted, wearing metal, carrying a lance, but she was not one of them. She was from deeper in the Christian lands, spoke some forest tribe Guttertongue. Austrian. German. Graf Orlok's great-grandma. Rain murmured with a smirk. Rain, I hissed. Rain pulled an apologetic cringe and waved me down. She found me in the aftermath, Zheng continued. After sundown, amid the crows and corpses and the fires still burning. My leash was so long and thin by then that Batu's pet wizards had left me where I lay, to tend myself while they drank and looted like the rest. I was sat on a broken beam, pulling crossbow bolts from my flesh, and she appeared before me like a black dog in the dusk. Zheng's voice dropped lower and lower as she spoke, her eyes heavy-lidded with memory and strange pleasure. No mistaking her for some Magyar knight turned around and lost in the rout. She stood on a pile of corpses, sure-footed as a mountain goat, dressed in black and red metal, a strange rose growing in grave dirt. She wanted me to see when she removed her helmet. Beautiful, or bacon face? Rain asked. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. The former, Yashu. By monkey standards she was a beauty. Shorter than you, but all you monkeys were shorter than. Blonde and pale and clear, youthful and athletic, bright-eyed and wide-mouthed. But the eyes were red as fresh blood, and when she descended the corpse pile to find a wounded Magyar soldier still clinging to his life, the incisors in her mouth slid out to the length of your thumb, before she bit into his throat. Gnarly, Rain murmured. I just swallowed on a dry mouth, wanting to believe. But it was not beauty which made her glorious, Zheng rumbled. She must have seen me during the battle, surprised and delighted to find something like herself. And I felt the same. She was being polite, waiting for me to finish working the bolt heads out of my flesh as she drank her bloody meal. When she was done, she cast the corpse down and we watched each other for a long time. She smiled the whole while. Oh my goodness, I breathed. She asked me a question. I did not speak the tongue, but she spoke with such glee, I did not need to know the words to understand her meaning. Which was? Rain asked. You too. Zheng said, then roared a laugh. I grunted yes. And then she came at me, bare-handed, and she loved every second of it. We fought 8 times over that following year, until the Khan left, fled back over the Carpathians because he couldn't crack the castles. The invasion roiled around us, and maybe she told herself that she fought for Christendom and her monkey friends, but I had eyes only for her, and she would drain and butcher her companions just to face me on even ground once more. My kinda woman, Rain said. She would have eaten you in a single bite, Yashu, Jing said, hard and sudden. You are skilled, but you are only a monkey. You wanna bet on that, big girl, she murmured. Rain, I said in a gentle warning tone. Please don't. Hey, I'm just making a point, Rain said to me with the corner of her mouth. I never bested the vampire either, Jing growled. This is no bragging contest, Yashu. Oh. Rain lit up and instantly relaxed, spreading her hands in a proxy apology. That's different then. Wrong end of the stick. My bad, yeah. I breathed a silent sigh of relief, fighting down the sudden pulse of adrenaline. Didn't want to sweat in my nice new clothes. At least not so soon. She was older than me, Zheng continued, staring Rain down. Much older. She moved like lightning and struck like a falling eagle, even unarmed. And I never won. Not once. That first meeting amid the corpses, we fought bare-handed. We pummeled each other to dust, exploring the limits of the other's strength, and I was found wanting, but I had never fought such a foe, never before felt such joy in a fight against something I could not beat. My face was broken, my fingers snapped, my muscles screaming, my legs buckled, and I. Zheng trailed off, watching Rain with a curious look, like a cat uncertain of an alien intruder in its territory. Rain sensed the change, and just raised her eyebrows. I knew what Zheng couldn't say. Of course I didn't know the exact words, but I could imagine, because I was privy to the context that Rain lacked. The natural old age death of her little bird, her little serenity, had driven Zheng to such a depth of grief that she'd fled from her embryonic humanity, into the wild, and eventually into the arms of the Mongol Empire, where violence had washed away her pain. She hadn't told that story, not to Rain. What had she said to the vampire, on the verge of defeat? Finish it, kill me, end this? It's okay, Zheng, I said out loud. I understand. You don't have to. Zheng swung her gaze to me, slow as ice, and let out a tiny grunt of acknowledgement before she carried on. The vampire walked away, into the night, she purred. I raged at her. It is the lowest act to leave the hunt to bleed out into the snow. Even a child knows to slit the throat of a dying deer, it is the most basic respect due to any prey. I spat at her for a coward and a dumb worm. Zheng took a slow, deep breath and blew it out like smoke, her lips curling into a smile. But then we met again in shattered Estergom, beneath the shadow of the citadel walls. And I felt a flutter of pleasure in my chest. I had misunderstood her. You enjoyed the fight against an equal. Rain nodded along. Zheng grinned wide, showing her maw of shark's teeth. She favored an axe. Not some woodsman's tool, but a long-handled terror, with a spike on the reverse for cracking armor and bone. She swung it like it was made of straw. Zheng chuckled to herself. One fight, our third time together, she broke both my legs in a dozen places with that axe. We were in a church. Some weeks after Estergom in some rotting village wedged into a Carpathian valley. I'd killed the rest of her soldiers but I couldn't take her. She left me panting on my back on the stone floor, pinned my hands with iron spikes to stop me fighting back, then sat on my chest. Went Rain. Goodness me, I breathed. But thankfully Zheng was amused rather than offended. No, Zheng laughed at the pair of us. It was not for that. She spoke to me, for 3 hours. In German. I understood not a word, but she had a voice like honey, and the manner of a young goddess. No restraint. No inhibitions. Nothing to hold her back. She didn't want to kill you at all, did she? Rain asked. Zheng purred an affirmative. She wanted the fight, but without the kill. No climax, not against me. She killed countless others, idiot horse warriors who did not comprehend what they faced. Jing shrugged. At first I did not understand, but after the church, I grew fond of her. And if I had one, I would not have killed her either. Perhaps. How sweet of you, Rain said with an ironic smile. You held back. I asked, wide-eyed at this unseen side of her, at this unfamiliar expression, almost sheepish. Perhaps. Jing shrugged. I had beaten her black and blue, her magic blood stained the swamp itself, and she staggered away while I lay in the mud and waited for my own wounds to heal. I could have taken her then, taken her any way I wanted, but I waited to see what she would do. Knowing her was more important than winning, She drained the other knights of her strange party, killed them like a leech, and was regenerated as if new. We fought for 4 more hours in the sucking, stinking fun, and eventually lay side by side, panting and wheezing, bloody and filthy from head to toe, until the larger forces caught up to our skirmish and we went our separate ways. Oh come on, this is practically a romance, Rain said, almost laughing. Do not mock it, Yashu, Jing replied, easy and mild. What happened to her? I asked. Jing considered me slowly. The final time we fought was in some unnamed defile deep in the Carpathians. In the forest. The army was fleeing the weather, giving up, and the Magyars were picking at our tail. Flea bites at best. They were spent. But I spit on horse warriors and monkeys shelled in metal. I went to the rearguard to find her. Jing smiled with sadly remembered pleasure. In the end it was just us. She buried herself in the earth, moved like a great worm, burst forth like a spider. I climbed the trees, fell upon her from above. We went all night without pause. By the end we were both exhausted, and there was no approaching army to interrupt us this time. I sat on a log, bleeding, bones broken, blind in one eye. She sprawled on the bare earth, her armor all cracked, covered in blood from both of us. She'd bitten me a couple of times in the fight, won a few mouthfuls of blood, but I was glad to make the donation. Rain let out a low whistle. She said words. I did not know them, but I knew the meaning. The war is over. Zheng sighed, and spoke slower and slower, savoring the memory. And I watched as she stood up, and she shed the broken pieces of her armor, and she held out a hand in invitation, and said, "Do you want to come with me?" "Oh, Zheng," I murmured. And so I told her, "Yes, but I am bound. And I do not wish to think." The vampire nodded, though she could not have understood a word, because I spoke in my first tongue, not Mongolian. She was worthy of true speech. I stood up, and walked away, slowly. Followed the trail of the army over the mountains. Zheng shrugged. I never saw the vampire again. Did you ever learn her name? I asked, hopeful. Zheng shook her head. I judge it all true, if I must, I said, wiping delicately at my eyes with the end of one pink sleeve, gripped by second-hand melancholy from 800 years ago. I tried to remind myself this story had also contained an awful lot of dead bystanders amid a bloody and pointless war. You said she wore expensive armor, right? Rain asked, sitting up straight and downing the dregs of her tea in one knockback swig. Expensive? Zheng rolled a shrug. Perhaps. You remember a coat of arms anywhere on it? Rain went on. A device, a symbol, a crest. That sort of thing. Zheng blinked twice, slowly, and I could almost feel the sifting of heavy gravel inside her mind, the sheer weight of centuries of memory. Rain waited in polite silence. I bit my lower lip. A pair of ravens, Zheng said eventually. Maybe crows. Black birds. Flanking a great stone castle. Mountain in the background. On the chest plate. Could you draw it from memory? Rain asked. Rain. I said. Where is this going? Perhaps, Zheng rumbled. We could look it up, Rain said, grinning at me and then, to my surprise, sharing the bright, confident grin with Jing too, using it on her in the way she used it on me. All sort of websites and archives of heraldry these days. Can't be too hard to find with a bit of legwork. Could be the crest of some kinda old knightly order, and if we're really lucky it might be a family crest. No promises, but hey, you want me to try? I'm guessing you ain't exactly had a lot of chances to visit any libraries or get online for the last few centuries, yeah? Zheng just stared back at her, unreadable and heavy-lidded. Or just, hey, Rain went on when she didn't get a reply. Offers always open. While I'm entirely supportive of reconnecting Zheng with old friends, I said, delicately clearing my throat, I'm not sure we want to make contact with an ancient German vampire right now. We have enough on our plate. Rain laughed and spread her hands. Hey, just saying Zheng might be able to get some closure. If she regrets, not taking up the offer from little Miss Carmilla back then. No regrets, Yashu, Zheng purred, and slid her eyes sideways, to where I sat on the bed, surrounded by pillows with my feet tangled in a loose blanket. If I had gone with the vampire, maybe I would never have met my little bird again. Rain raised her eyebrows. Little bird, huh? She echoed with infinite curiosity. Heard you call Heather that a couple of times before. Nice pet name. Got a story behind it? A spike of panic went through my heart, but I couldn't even open my mouth to stammer. Wasn't this what I'd wanted? If Rain and Zheng were going to communicate, which was the first building block of any relationship, let alone polyamory, then sooner or later they were going to learn each other's history. And Rain was going to learn that Zheng believed I was the reincarnation of her dead sister/maker/lover. Her Serenity. Her shaman. Her little bird. Rain caught the blushing panic on my face and raised a concerned eyebrow. I'm sorry, I pulled myself together. It's not my place to say. It's Zheng's. It is your story, too, little bird, Zheng purred, and a shiver went up my spine. If you wish it. I'd love to be let in on this, Rain said. Slowly, like prying wary prey from a hidey hole, Zheng plucked her dice from the tray one by one, and made them dance between her knuckles. She watched Rain with dark intensity, and Rain watched her right back, uncrossing her legs and sprawling in the chair, one hand raised in a silent waiting shrug. There is a story, Yashu, Zheng purred eventually. You must win it from me. If you can take 2 in a row. Ah, come on. Rain flung her arms wide, complaining but grinning with the sheer joy of competition. We're neck and neck. 2 in a row. Prove you are more than a monkey. Rain clicked her tongue and grabbed her dice, and Zheng rolled first. Time had flown by these last 2 hours, sequestered together in the welcome warmth and familiarity of our bedroom, settled into the routine of challenge in dice and deep memory. I felt like a sponge, absorbing every morsel of history that both Zheng and Rain revealed. Part of me wanted it to never end, to stay up here for weeks, doing nothing but swapping stories and feeling attractive. That way I wouldn't have to face the inevitable romantic confrontation, the slowly tightening fist in my belly. Akarakish Lost to Time, itself a relic dredged from the past, turned out to be the perfect game for Rain and Zheng. After Rain's initial surprise victory and Zheng's counterattack, they'd taken wins off each other, going back and forth, neither able to hold the upper hand for more than 1 round. Rain was always quick to develop a new strategy, a new angle of daring risk. Zheng was always too fast and adaptive for the same trick to work twice, cutting off Rain's ploy before she could gain a lead, but equally never able to fully predict Rain's next move. Neither had managed to best the other twice in a row. Not yet. I could barely follow beyond the opening moves of each round. Gambling mechanics, dice games, numbers, this was absolutely not my forte. I could have improvised some brain math, plugged the values and the potential outcomes into hyperdimensional mathematical perception, watched Rain and Zheng through a quarter second of abyssal senses, and known exactly how each round would go. But that would spoil the fun, and probably ruin my lovely new clothes too. Instead I got all the rewards with none of the pain. I got to discover more about two people I loved. Zheng told stories about the Mongols, stories about fighting and conquests in which she had been a tiny cog, but an exuberant cog full of manic life and lust for combat, free of the concerns of the Khans themselves. Bloody and violent, but distant in time. She told a few darker stories too, from later in her life, from the long centuries of slavery, passed from wizard to wizard by trickery or bargain or cosmic mistake. In those stories she was never an active participant, but a dark silent watcher on the periphery, while mages murdered each other in the world's underbelly, or got themselves killed calling up things they could not control, or walked off into nothingness in the voids beyond reality. "Hold up," Rain said after Zheng had told a story particularly difficult to believe. "I don't care if Heather judges this true or not, I just want to know what happened to the younger mage, after she put the demon in the bear." Zheng shrugged. "Mauled by bear. I have seen this 3 times. What, mages putting demons in bears?" Rain laughed. "This is a thing that happened more than once. Don't put demons in bears." Rain's range of stories was tighter, unable to stride across centuries of memory, but to me they were no less fascinating. She made shoplifting a chocolate bar at 7 years old sound as exciting as any bare-knuckle boxing match. She told us the story of her and Evelyn first arriving at this house in Sherrowford, 2 years ago, with no idea what to expect and somebody else's lifetime of junk to sort through, a story that I took particular personal interest in, even if it was a bit uneventful. She told us of teenage mishaps before she'd run away from home, of her first fumbling kiss with a queen bee type and the fallout that followed, and the time she'd been cornered in the school changing rooms by 3 other girls who all turned out to be into her in various different ways. Or the time she'd fought a dog set on her and some schoolmates by a scorned ex-boyfriend of one of the other girls. Zheng barked a laugh at the climax of that one, and I stared in goggle-eyed disbelief. "That's not how to scare off a dangerous dog, Rain," I said. "Not at all." She turned to me with a grin and snapped her teeth together twice. Clack clack. "Girl bites dog. Shoulda been in the newspaper." "What did it taste like?" Zheng rumbled, deeply amused. "Mostly just fur and dog smell, it was only his neck," Rain grimaced. "Didn't get a chance for a second bite. The dog was so shocked he jumped up yelping, ran for it. Too fast for the lad to catch. He was hopping mad about it though, and I think he would-a laid into us with his fists, but I snapped my teeth at him and said something. Like, 'I'll bite your nose clean off too, mate,' and he scarpered after his dog. He never bothered Jen again, far as I know. Dog biter." Zheng roared a laugh. Only once did Rain slip into a somber tone, for the only story so far she told about being homeless. About crows. I don't think she noticed when her tone changed, the way her words thickened, the way she lowered her eyes as she spoke. I very nearly broke my self-imposed rule of not rising and joining either of them during the storytelling, maintaining my temporary illusion of detached distance. Rain had told me so very little about what it was really like to be homeless. It was a short story, in which nothing much really happened. She'd been walking parallel to some train tracks, somewhere south of London, heading away from one horrible Surrey commuter belt town in search of another. And it was funny, she explained, voice far away, struggling to anchor herself with a hitch of ironic smile. After I started dropping raisins, the birds just kept following me. I'd eat a handful, then toss a couple over my shoulder, she mimed the gesture, and they'd flap down from the trees and peck up the fruit and join the flock. It is always good to share with the carrion eaters, Zheng purred with genuine approval. Rain shrugged. Didn't begrudge sharing. Stole the bag of raisins anyway, and I sort of liked the company. Felt more like an animal myself anyway. It was a real quiet stretch of countryside, no trains running that day, and the birds didn't break the silence either, which was odd in retrospect, but I didn't think about it at the time. They just ate and followed, and gathered. Maybe crows call their friends over when there's a free meal going. They do, Jing said. Rain's voice hitched in a way I'd never heard before, as if she had to catch herself. She blinked once, then took a sharp breath. Rain. I murmured, loath to interrupt the story but incapable of not responding to my lover showing that kind of distress. Running from what? Jing purred. That was not the beginning of your story. Yeah, that's a different one, Rain said without missing a beat. Anyway, this copper takes one look at me, then looks up, and his jaw drops. Turns white as a sheet and bolts for his car. The birds? I asked, amazed. Yeah. Rain grinned. I'd collected a couple hundred crows by then. In the trees, following me, flapping all around. I was so tired, so out of it, so dissociated, I didn't really pay them any attention. I knew they were there, but I didn't really think about it. But this copper bolts and I look up and I'm like, oh right, I look like the start of a horror B-movie, and this guy doesn't want to be the cop who dies in the opening scene. Rain started laughing. So I take my chance and run, while he's shitting himself or calling for backup to shoot birds or whatever. The carrion eaters know their own. They respect kindness, Jing purred. I dunno about that, Rain said. But they earned mine. I tossed the bag in the end, threw the whole lot of raisins in the air to thank them, and so the copper couldn't use the cloud of birds to follow me once he got his bottle back. Felt kinda good. Pity there's not more crows round this part of Sherrowford. I sorta like him ever since. True, I said immediately. Rain and Jing both looked at me in surprise, but I held my head high as I blushed. That story was true. I believe every word of it. Rain smiled. I won't lie to you, Heather. Promise. Prior oath, Jing purred. Unfair advantage. But she was smiling too, showing her dragon's teeth. I struggled constantly with a desire to get up and initiate physical contact, with Rain or Jing or both. Time bred comfort in my new clothes, and the storytelling engendered intimacy, and those combined into a slow need for casual skinship. Part of me wanted to lean against Rain, another part of me wanted to clamber into Zheng's lap, but I couldn't do either in front of the other. Besides, they had their chairs, and I had the bed. The bed was my realm right now, stretched out with my blanket, but never covered more than a fraction, showing off what I was. Wearing these new clothes indoors almost seemed like a waste, especially after I'd skipped downstairs to the kitchen and back again, skirt twirling, hoodie hanging from my shoulders like a mantle. But there was no way I could go out in public like this. Not yet. I contented myself with the attention of those closest to me. Stay where you are, I had to remind myself more than once. The bed is inviolate. Rain can put her feet up on it, and Zheng can lean an elbow on the sheets. But this is yours, and for the moment, you are separate. This was not about me. This was about them. Rain did not win twice in a row after Zheng issued her challenge. To my surprise, and Zheng's, she lost once, then told a comically detached story about a rather awful attempt to take Evelyn fishing when they were 17, which I made a mental note to ask Evelyn about, because it sounded exaggerated, and then she lost a second time. What is wrong, Yashu? Zheng asked, slow and curious, like a tiger faced with prey lying down to be disemboweled without a fight. You could have rolled again, not clung to what you had. Rain cracked a strange grin. Maybe I'm sandbagging. Why? Maybe I want to tell you more about being homeless. And she did. A loss was still a loss, even if invited. As Rain began to tell her tale, her strategy suddenly leapt out at me, and I struggled to stay still, stay quiet, vibrating with excitement that she was offering this vulnerability to Zheng, showing her belly. Or was it a strategy at all? Was abyssal ruthlessness misinterpreting an attempt at genuine connection? I reached out an impotent hand toward Rain, toward teenage Rain in the past, a presence I couldn't comfort. She caught the gesture and shot me a smile, and must have seen the look on my face. Hey, Heather, it's okay, I'm here now, yeah. It breaks my heart to think of you sleeping on the streets, I said, my voice cracking. I blinked water out of my eyes. Sorry for interrupting. "'S'alright. Appreciate the thought," she said, and blew me a kiss. Anyway, I got lucky. For about a month, I found somewhere that I could almost call home. A genuine smile flickered across her lips. It was a squat. A real one, run by an anarchist commune. Not like the student digs I used to have in Sherrowford. One of those old terraced London townhouses, tied up in legal stuff by some land developer who wanted to do something with it, I dunno what. All those rooms, all that housing, sitting there empty. So they'd taken it over. Anarchists? I asked. I didn't really know what that meant. No masters, Jing purred. Yeah. Rain cracked a grin. Jing knows what's up. Swear I picked up a lot of my politics. About a dozen of them lived in the place. They took care of it, fixed it up, shared everything, food, resources, bills, work. A real community. I couldn't really contribute much. I mean, what was I? A 14-year-old girl, off her head, no skills except violence. It does seem dangerous, I admitted. Yeah. Living in a squat was asking for trouble. All kinda monsters hang around those sorts of projects if they're not chased off. But these people, they were the real deal, they lived their ideology, and I was safe there. They didn't have a leader, exactly, but they mostly deferred to this one lady. I don't remember her name. I wasn't. Rain swallowed. Good with names, then. Older lady, maybe in her 40s. Very kind face. She talked to me a lot, taught me a bit of cooking. Her boyfriend lent me books, though I found reading hard at the time. Still got one of them. Rain nodded toward the corner of her desk, at her battered, dog-eared, yellow-tagged copy of The Conquest of Bread. She'd tried to get me to read it a couple of times, and I'd discovered I wasn't one for theory. But now I wanted to. They fed brain and body, Jing purred. That they did, yeah. Rain nodded. I was there for about 3 or 4 weeks. Almost started to get better, you know. Felt a touch human again. These people, they weren't my people. They didn't need me, but well, it was nice. And then one night the Met turned up to break the doors down and arrest everybody and change the locks. Oh. I couldn't help myself, frowning with second-hand outrage. What absolute, well. Yes. Jing growled. I flinched in surprise. She was leaning forward in her chair, eyes boring holes into Rain. Dunno what I hope to do, Rain said. But I tied up the cops for a few minutes of shouting, gave a few of the others time to grab stuff and get out the back. Knew I shouldn't hurt anybody, 'cause even if I got away, the bastards would pin it on the others. So I just ran around a lot and kicked a few shins, then jumped out a window. Rain pulled a smile of such nostalgic sadness, an echo of her confidence filtered through old insecurity, fear, and homelessness. Back into London streets, she said. The end. Oh, Rain, I murmured. I'm not even going to judge that one, of course you're telling the truth. Rain shrugged with exaggerated self-consciousness. Glad you think so. Well, that's me done. She scooped up her dice again. What you say, big girl? Ready to lose twice in a row? But Jane was staring at Rain, wide-eyed with predatory focus, alert and switched on. If she'd turned that kind of gaze on me, I would have curled up in a ball in a corner in an effort to escape, but Rain merely paused with a raised eyebrow. No more dice, Jing rumbled. My mouth went dry. Adrenaline throbbed through my veins. A corner of my mind started screaming. What had gone wrong? I glanced back and forth between Zhang and Rain, at the pair of frozen expressions gauging and judging the other. I managed. Hold up, Rain murmured to me, without taking her eyes off Zheng. No more dice, hey. You will not win my past from me, Zheng purred. You will not take it as loot. Oh no, no 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 no, I thought. I almost launched myself off the bed to put myself between the two of them. I could feel the fight coming. Abyssal instinct recognized this. Abyssal instinct does not understand people. I give it freely, Zheng said, and I couldn't believe my ears. As a gift. Rain tilted her head in a gracious nod. Cool. I accept. I was made by accident, Zheng purred. In grief and love. To my wide-eyed heart-fluttering surprise, Zheng told Rain the story of her birth, of her early life in northern Siberia, of her people, and her little bird. The same story she told me in the woods beyond Sherrowford, where she'd confessed what I meant to her and what she thought I was, where I'd convinced her to come home with us. The version she told in these comfortable surroundings was far less fragmented, without the tears or the tenderness. I'd never told Rain anything Zheng had revealed to me that day. That was Zheng's history to share or keep private, and I felt lightheaded as she told the story. Rain listened politely and asked pointed questions, and to my equally fascinated ears she managed to draw out details I'd never heard from Zheng. The shape of her beloved's face, the scent of the northern forests, the practices of the Mongols' tame wizards. Zheng reached the end, and told the part that made my heart skip a beat. All right, Rain said, respectful and serious. So Heather's the reincarnation of your shaman. Cool. I winced, blushing terribly. Rain, how can you just believe it like that? It's all right, she said. It's Zheng's deal, yeah. Zheng shrugged, expansive and unreadable. Perhaps. Perhaps you monkeys are reborn again, like the Buddhists say. Perhaps not. Perhaps I've grown sentimental. It matters not. My shaman is here, and here is where I stay, until she dies again. But that's not for a long time. Rain cracked a grin and pointed at me. Not if I have anything to say about it. Agreed, Zheng purred. Rain, I protested. Aren't you know? I mean, this isn't rational. I huffed. Oh, who am I kidding, nothing in my life is rational anymore. Maybe I am a reincarnated shaman from northern Siberia, fine. Rain laughed. Hey, as long as Zheng isn't making prior claim. I claim nothing but a place at the shaman's side, Zheng purred. I got no problem with that, Rain said, easy and calm, but with something unspoken beneath her words. Here, you showed me yours, I'll show you mine. Our Rain. I hissed. But I'd misunderstood. Guttermind Heather, I shushed myself. I wasn't an accident, Rain was saying. But my parents sure didn't plan for whatever the hell I was. Rain returned the respect and trust, and told Zheng the basics of her upbringing, her long dissociative state, her selective mutism, and why she ran away from home. Far more condensed and coherent than the tearful tale she told me in the room at Sherrowford General Hospital, unblurred by painkillers or adrenaline or fear of rejection. She told it almost laughing, and capped the story off with a proper ending, a truncated version of when she met Evie, the journey through the Say estate to find her new reason for being a person. You love the wizard too, Zheng purred. I do. Yeah. I love Evie like a sister, won't lie. I killed a couple of things like you, just to get to her, and that was before I even knew her name. Rain, I scolded, very gently. Rain spread her hands. Not as old or experienced as Zheng though, fair point. Then they were not things like me, Zheng purred. Rain laughed. To my surprise, Zheng laughed too, low and slow and dark, and I breathed a tight sigh of relief. Rain noticed my tension and shot a wink at me. I managed to nod back, one hand to my chest, rubbing my sternum through my ribbed sweater. Yashu, Zheng made a deep rumble thinking sound, eyes narrowing to sleepy slits. This does not do you justice. Come again. Soren Gantz Kano, Jing said. You are no monkey. You are the hunter that dies without the pack. Born alone. You should have starved to death on the steppe. But you did not. You found your wizard, and you found the shaman. I was afraid Rain might laugh again, but she nodded along, taking this seriously. I dared not make a sound lest I disrupt the strange alchemy that crackled in the air between them. You want to join the pack? She asked. Jing stared, heavy-lidded and dark, and blinked once. Cool, Rain said, as easy as agreeing on what to eat for lunch. Jing purred once, and grew quiet. That's it? I blurted out, wide-eyed, then blushed when they both looked at me, suddenly self-conscious under the scrutiny now that Rain and Jing had joined forces in some indefinable, ineffable fashion. You sorry, I didn't mean to. That's just the peace treaty, Heather, Rain laughed, and kicked her feet up onto the bed. Jing old girl, I think you and I need to have a real talk. About the reason we're up here in the first place. Jing purred. And what better time for it? Rain went on, turning theatrical with a wave of her hand. She kissed the tips of 2 fingers, and then used them to shoot a double-barreled finger gun at me. She's right here. My heart juddered so hard I thought it was going to stop. My insides turned to a wall of butterflies. My face went red. The shaman is always here, Jing purred. Yes, philosophically speaking Heather would be with me even if I was in a lightless pit, she's proved that, Rain said. But I mean she's here, right now, in the room, and she asked for this, so she can't very well run off without undermining her own aims. Rain had me dead to rights. In the few seconds she'd been speaking, my limbs had acquired a mind of their own. On shaking feet and numb hands I'd clambered off the bed and slipped back into the fluffy slippers, my mind whirling with half-baked excuses to leave the room and what. Rain's gaze pinned me to the floor. Zheng's eyes fixed me to the wall. I swallowed hard, and tried to locate my lungs. I won't run, I squeaked. Rain smiled, bright and confident. Zheng showed all her teeth. Then let's talk about you, Rain said. But this isn't about me. I said. Or rather, I attempted to say that. Vibrating like a caged butterfly, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it deep down in my belly, my head about to catch fire from my overheating brain, my hands quivering in front of me, and all I managed to do was squeak out an approximation of those words in a breathless rush. Rain laughed, light and soft and oh so easy to fall in love with, and absolutely not what I needed right then. Heather, this is all about you, she said. Take it easy, yeah. We're not gonna eat you. I gave her such a look, a grade A frown through my incandescent blush. Don't. I said we're not. She raised her hands in laughing surrender. Zheng purred in agreement, long and low and loud, and that didn't help either. Her purring was a siren's lure, answered by a sympathetic response deep in my belly, a squirmy feeling that called me to step closer, stop worrying, curl up in her lap and purr back at her. For a long moment I was stuck mute. Couldn't finish my thought out loud, because my thoughts had been pounded into mush. Part of me wanted to kick off the slippers and shrug out of my pink-scaled hoodie and crawl back onto the bed and make unrepeatable noises. Abyssal instincts responded in kind, not with the aggression of flared tentacles and an urge to hiss, but with a soft-bodied, belly-showing vulnerability, a desire to puff my chest out and wiggle appendages I didn't have. Perhaps luckily for the rest of me, that part didn't possess veto powers in non-emergency situations. Was this all it took to render my plans down into nothing? A little direct attention and light flirting? I felt so seen in that moment, so exposed, with Rain and Jing both looking at me, paying me attention, thinking about me. The beautiful new clothes made it worse or better, depending on how much I listened to my body's screaming instincts because here I was, on display, presenting myself. No baggy hoodie to act as a shell, no blanket to curl up inside like a shy mollusk, no tenny or lousy or preem to hide behind. My plumage was fluffed, my coloration bright, it was mating season, and I was in bloom. I managed to heave down a shuddering breath, shuddering so hard I saw Rain's expression twitch with actual concern, and pressed a hand to my chest, as if to hold myself back. No, I snapped at myself. This is not about sex. You told both of them this is not about sex. To go back on my word would be indescribably fun. An awful part of me that was forever 14 years old and flush with hormones knew that with one word I could have both of them with me on the bed, and I would be a gibbering mess within half a minute, and I had the power to do that, and nothing would stop me. But it would be a betrayal of all three of us. It would solve nothing except my libido. I think we've broken her, Rain stage whispered to Zheng. The shaman is unbreakable, Zheng said. Have faith. No, no, I forced out. You've come pretty close to well. Yes. The less said the better. Better. Heather, Rain said my name with a sudden and unmistakable whip crack of command. I flinched and stared at her, snared by the serious expression on her face. Rain. I stammered. I can tell you're turned on by this. A huge sigh escaped my lips. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I dash. Hey, nothing to be sorry for, Rain went on, still hard and commanding, and I shut up instantly. What you said earlier, in bed this morning. Right there, she pointed at our bed. I took it seriously. This has to be about more than sex, my own words echoed in memory. I know, I know. I cringed with guilt. Stupid horny Heather, I scolded myself for being an animal. I'm sorry, I dash. No, Heather, listen, she almost snapped. Don't mistake flirting for going back on my word. Even if you give up, I won't. I'll refuse. I blinked at her. I'm saying no, Rain finished. Zheng rumbled in agreement. Shaman, you threatened to leave rather than satisfy your own carnality. I too say no. Like an alley cat after the proverbial bucket of cold water, I came up blinking and sober from the depths of my own arousal. A chorus of non-consent from Rain and Zheng shut everything down. 14-year-old Heather gave up. Abyssal instinct receded into background noise. I looked away, terribly embarrassed and feeling very silly, trying not to hide behind my hands. She seriously said that to you? Rain was asking Zheng. The shaman threatened to spend her day with the mooncalf, doing handstands in the park. Well damn. Rain said. Don't threaten yourself with a good time, Heather. Maybe you should do that anyway, have a day out with Lozzie sometime. Yes, yes, I sighed at myself, still shaking in the come down from my own biological high, but much more in control now. Look, this is meant to be about you two. You two becoming well, if not friends, then at least understanding. Talking. Trying to, I waved a hand as I searched for the right word. And we have. Loads a talking. Rain cracked a grin. I think I get Zheng now. A bit. You get me, Zheng. Same for you. The wolf had already won my respect, Zheng purred. Now she has my understanding. That's me. Rain pointed at herself. I'm the wolf. Come on, that's gonna get confusing, with twill and all. You are allowed to use my name, you know. I don't think Zheng goes much for names, I said. Listen, please, it's not time to talk about me yet, it can't be, you're not ready. Heather, Rain said my name with such indulgent affection. What is the one thing Zheng and I have in common, more than anything else? She pointed a finger gun at me, then lowered her thumb in slow motion, and mouthed, pow, and I rolled my eyes and turned tomato red again. If we don't talk about you, we ain't ever gonna get anywhere. Robbed of the shield of my own sexuality, the embarrassment was worse. No escape into arousal, no fleeing out into the upstairs hallway either, though I was painfully aware of how many paces lay between me and the doorway. A couple of my phantom limbs even reached toward the door handle. My breath came in shallow little jerks as I fought down the most intense self-consciousness of my life. I don't like being the center of attention, I said. My voice came out so very small, so pitiful and pathetic, that it broke the wave of my own embarrassment on a wall of pure exasperation. I huffed and screwed up my eyes and my fists. Oh, for crying out loud, why am I like this? Hey, Heather, you look amazing, Rain said, confident and easy. And it'll be a hell of a lot harder to talk about you if you deprive of us the best eye candy in the city. Eye candy? I wrinkled my nose at Rain, about to snap a retort. But then I slammed to a stop at the victory grin on her face. She'd known exactly the effect those words would have on me, exactly how to snap me out of the embarrassment. Rain reached forward and patted the edge of the bed between her and Zheng. Come on, you know you wanna. Everybody likes hearing people say nice things about them. Oh, alright, I said. Fine. We can talk about me, and I'll stay to listen. Don't say I didn't warn you if I have to plug my ears. Good enough, shaman, Zheng purred. The 6 or 7 paces back to the bed felt like a mile, but I drew strength from my new clothes and what I was. I passed Rain and sat down on the edge of the bed, roughly equidistant from her and Zheng. As I sat, I smoothed my skirt over my backside, then slipped my feet out of the fuzzy slippers and drew them up on the bed. So then, Rain began. Heather, you don't mind dash. Wait, please, I managed to say, injecting my tone with just a touch of Evelyn-like superiority. I took my time getting comfortable, settling the pink-scaled hoodie about my shoulders, and even reached over to where I'd been sitting before, to grab the pretty colored dice I'd been playing with. I rolled them in my hands and lined them up on the bed, one by one, then raised my chin high. Very well, I said, sounding much more confident and in control than I truly felt. I'm ready as I'll ever be. Eyes left, Rain. Eyes right, Zheng. Could you perhaps not watch me like a pair of foxes with a chicken? Zheng broke into a rumbling laugh. Rain turned her eyes away and suppressed a smile by biting the tip of her tongue. It's not helping. I huffed. Oh, for pity's sake, if I ever actually manage to have a threesome with you two, I'll probably black out before we even begin. This is completely impossible, I'm clearly incapable of dealing with it. Alright, alright. Rain raised her hands in mock surrender. I'm not even trying to tease you right now. You're teasing yourself. Let's make it easy on you, get to the point, yeah. What you say, Zheng? But Zheng was watching me with predatory interest. Her jaw hung open, teeth exposed, tongue roving over them. She clacked them shut and purred in agreement, turning her attention back to Rain. We are here for the shaman. Yes. That we are. That we are, said Rain. Want me to go first? Put my cards on the table. Zheng gestured expansively with one lazy hand, blinking as slow as a dozing tiger. Rain nodded just as slowly, as if they were locked in a strange unspoken ritual dance. Body language, predator posturing, the natural communication of a pair of killers or monsters, those who had chosen their own path with no regard as to sensibility or survivability. As I sat there with the hem of my skirt pinched between thumb and forefinger just to have something to hold on to, I was struck with an incredible sense of gratitude. I was allowed to witness this, these two incredible people in such an intimate moment. I was a soft mollusk curled in my shell, and these two sharp creatures were here to show me what they could do. Rain extended one hand, to point at me. I love this woman, she said to Zheng. No humor. No joke. Heart naked. And I've made a conscious decision, both eyes open, to follow her into hell. What? Rain. I blurted out. Zheng grunted. I stared at Rain, wide-eyed with realization as she explained. Only for a few seconds, course. Heather saved us. Rain shrugged. But it was in my head, Evie's head too. Dunno if it touched Twill, maybe the dog smell drove it off. She cracked a smile at her own weakly attempted joke. But from that moment, I knew what Heather was up against. Giant alien eyeball that can rewrite reality and peel our world open like a circular saw on a tin can. Can you guess what I decided? It was not a rhetorical question. Rain waited for an answer. Devotion, Jing purred. Rain nodded, and finally grinned again. Yeah, she said, barely above a whisper. I decided, right then as it was rummaging in my head, right in that moment when it could see my thoughts. Might have been a defense mechanism maybe, but that doesn't make it any less true. Twill's a werewolf, she's got special protection, and Evie's got experience. But me? I'm just a regular ol' ape. And when it was in here, she put a fingertip to her forehead. Rooting around, I thought at it, you ever try to finish the job, you ever take Heather like you took her twin? Then I'm coming after your stupid giant eyeball with a broken bottle the size of the world, and there's not a hospital big enough to stitch that for you. Jing broke into a savage grin. Your courage is greater than your muscles, little wolf, but muscle is half courage at first. Rain, I whined, channeling deep embarrassment into mild exasperation. Don't be absurd, you can't glass the eye. You're not going to get into a bar fight with it. Oh yeah. She finally looked away from Zheng and turned to me. Watch me. And she was so angry. Not with me, of course. Rain's anger was cold and focused, the iron-hard certainty of conviction. If it had been anybody other than her, I would have flinched. Why? I asked. Rain blew out a breath, expelling her anger and smiling for me. Last I checked. 'Cause I'm madly head over heels in love with you, duh. At any other time I might have blushed and rolled my eyes and muttered some brush-off comment. But after Rain's speech, after her anger at my transcendent tormentor, such a joke would be in poor taste. I held her gaze. Thank you, I whispered. Because I like making you feel good. I like making you warm and happy, and I love those moments when you're completely unself-conscious and you smile at something without thinking first. I love the way you get dressed. I love the way you roll your eyes, just like now, yeah, that too. I love the way you blush, I love teasing you. I love the way you look curled up with a book, and you can't see yourself then, glued to the words. I love the way you dash. Our Rain. I wanted to curl up and hide behind my hands. SSTO dash. To my surprise, Rain stopped. She cracked a grin that made my heart do backflips. She'd made her point. I want the shaman to thrive. Zheng spoke up without preamble, her voice a low comfortable purr. To be strong. To live as long as possible. To be what she is, unconstrained. Yeah, me too. Rain shrugged. But that doesn't tell me shit I don't already know. How do you feel about her, zombie girl? Come on. Truth. Slowly, Zheng looked at me, and I felt like a mouse before an adder. It took every ounce of willpower not to squirm or squeak as her face split into the fierce joy of her shark-toothed grin. She is fire hidden in the heart of a stone. She is born to lead, but she sees it not. Those who invite devotion are never worthy of it, but those who know it not are worth every step. That's very, very kind of you, Zheng, I said, blushing. I dash. Hey, no, Rain spoke over me. Drop the prophet and Messiah talk for a sec. Look at me, and tell me how you feel about Heather. I blushed like a steam engine, but managed to hold my tongue. I didn't understand what exactly Rain was getting at, but it seemed important to her. Zheng just raised a curious eyebrow. I have told you how I feel about the shaman. I am no poet. Rain tilted her head to the side in suffering skepticism. Not good enough, her expression said. Speak plain, wolf, Zheng rumbled. Do you love her? Rain asked. Zheng blinked, once, very slowly. Why is that a question? Idiot monkey, Jin growled. Yes. Yes, I love the shaman. How is this not plain? Rain's grin shifted tone. Good. That's all I needed. Jin growled in her throat like a goaded animal. So, come on, Rain went on. You and her, pair, oh women, what you wanna do? Our Rain. I squeaked, mortified. You said no dash. No sex, yeah, Rain agreed with gusto. But we gotta talk about it, Heather. We gotta boil it down. If you can't do this, I will. If you're uncomfortable talking about it, say so, and I'll drop it here, but we gotta come back to it eventually. There is nothing wrong in the comfort of flesh, Zheng purred, vaguely amused. You monkey's rut. Sometimes it is funny, but it is good for you. Well, I stammered and blushed. I mean, yes, in theory, but dash. I would offer the shaman every comfort, every intimacy, Zheng purred, soft as a distant waterfall heard through miles of jungle. She sighed a slow and heavy sigh, and looked at her own hands and arms. And I would enjoy bringing her happiness. I couldn't say anything to that, and it was a minor miracle I didn't either run for the door or pass out from overheating. Straightforward, Rain said. I like it. What is good in life, eh? Real Conan the Barbarian here. Don't call her that. I squeaked. Hey, it's a compliment, Rain told me. Conan was a rebel slave. Slaver killer. Big respect. I like this compliment, Zheng rumbled. Only in that one terrible film, I sighed. I know, the books are different. Rain shot me an indulgent grin. The books are always different. Still can't believe you got me to watch that, I muttered. Rain clapped her hands together. Right then. Peace treaty signed. Borders drawn. Common ground established. This is no war, Zheng rumbled. Exactly. It's peace. Rain grinned. I tooted and rolled my eyes again. Rain gestured toward me. How'd you feel about sharing her? I had to bite my lips and make fists with both hands to stop myself from screaming. She is not mine to share, Zheng growled. Nor yours. She is her own. Yes, thank you. I blurted out, red in the face and whirling like a firework, feeling like a squid expelling itself from its hiding place and filling the water with shimming rainbow ink of convulsive panic. Even my phantom limbs joined in, waving like overexcited hands. This isn't my bloody harem. You're not sharing me, we're trying to I don't even know anymore. Rain laughed. Evie's been showing you too much anime. I boggled at her. What does that have to do with anything? I care not if she takes 100 lovers, Jin continued. I am not like you monkeys. I do not grasp. Okay, I sighed. I think 100 is a little out, but I do appreciate the principle, thank you. I think. Rain shot me a raised eyebrow. Maybe you should talk about what you want here, Heather, how you feel about this situation. I can't think dash, running on instinct, I glanced over my shoulder at the door to the upstairs hallway. Escape, escape. Part of my brain screamed. In one smooth motion, Rain turned in her chair and kicked her legs up onto the bed next to me, a harbor chain to block my scuttling retreat. I hadn't even been about to move, but I squeaked in surprise all the same, flinching backward as a small hiss escaped from between my lips, but then Rain winced, making no effort to hide her mistake as she drew in a sharp breath between her teeth. One of her hands flew to grasp her left thigh. Rain. It's okay, it's okay. She grinned through the pain, eyes watering. Just pulled on the stitches. Easy to forget, you know. It's okay, nothing's popped, just dash, she winced again. Burns. Burns? I echoed. Oh no, Rain, you can't just assume that. You have to check the wound. It's fine, it's fine. She wheezed and tried to return to normal, but I wasn't having it. And we're in the middle of dash. Rain, I snapped. Now. I'd rather dash. I huffed and swiveled toward her on the bed, all my embarrassment forgotten. Then let me check. Roll up your trouser leg. Rain gave an awkward grin and eyed the end of her trousers. She was wearing a pair of comfortable old jeans, loose and baggy. These don't exactly roll up that far. Then take them off. I lost my temper. Rain blinked involuntary tears out of her eyes and shrugged at Zheng. Wants me to take off my clothes in front of you. What can I do, hey? Oh, don't be so perfectly ridiculous, I huffed at her. Zheng can leave the room if you're uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Zheng, I guess this is over, but health comes first. Zheng shrugged in easy acceptance. Nah, I'm cool with it, Rain said, lowering her feet from the bed with extreme care and standing up slowly, putting her weight on her good leg. I just joke through the pain. You know that, Heather. And so, Rain got half naked in front of Zheng for the first time, for one of the most unsexy reasons I could possibly imagine. I wasn't even thinking about that though. Images of popped stitches and torn scar tissue chased all thoughts of rogue sexuality from my mind. Concern for Rain's health came first. With a little difficulty and a little help from me, she wiggled her jeans down off her hips and let them pool around her ankles, then stood still as I gently peeled back the dressing around her left thigh. I'd done this enough times by now, changed her dressings when she was exhausted or deep in painkiller haze, or simply when I wanted to express my care and affection. I breathed a sigh of relief when all the stitches were still exactly where they were meant to be, holding closed the sides of her ragged wound, the angry red in the middle still losing a tiny trickle of clear blood plasma. See, it's all good, she said. Back to the hospital again on Wednesday, right? Yes, indeed. Are you having trouble standing? I asked, looking up at her face. Nah. Not for you. I took the opportunity to change the dressing, swapping in fresh gauze and bandage from the medicine box which now lived on Rain's bedside table. My by now practiced hands made quick work with scissors and antibiotic ointment. In the back of my mind I knew I was doing this to introduce Zheng to the part of our relationship which mattered infinitely more than any amount of sex. Rain took my ministrations without complaint, one hand on my shoulder for support, and as I worked I felt more and more like some kind of remora or deep-sea mollusk tending to a shark. Abyssal instinct blossomed into an understanding I could not have put into words, an understanding that surprised me, so different to the cold logic of survival. As I tended Rain in front of Zheng, abyssal instinct acknowledged the mutualistic behavior. By the time I was almost done, abyssal instinct was prodding at me to secrete antiseptic mucus from glands I didn't have, and rub it into Rain's wound. She is sweet, isn't she? Rain said. Oh hush, I whispered. The shaman is love, Zheng agreed. For once, I didn't blush. Abyssal instinct did not blush. It wanted to mate but that didn't mean the same thing as having sex. I stuck down the last edge of Rain's dressing and looked up at her, into those rich brown eyes. If I talk about what I want, I said. Are you going to interpret those wants and bend yourself around them again? You've already been working harder at this than I have. I won't. Promise, she said. Then what do you want? I asked. Rain opened her mouth, but then paused. She took a moment to study her dressing, then slowly tugged her jeans back up and sat down very carefully. I want you to be happy, she said. Don't want you to get hurt. Want you to dash. Wolf, Zheng purred. The shaman asked what you want. Not what you want for her. Rain blinked at her, then burst out laughing. Fair point, fair point. What do I want? There's barely enough of me to want, you understand that, yeah. But if I had to say something, I'd say I want to be Heather's special person. I don't want her to ever drift away from me. But she's promised me that she won't. So I already have what I want. I have true wealth. And you're not jealous anymore? I asked. Jin grunted. If she was going out clubbing, getting picked up by randoms, eh? Rain squinted one eye to the side. I wouldn't be so happy. Rain. I blushed faintly, mortified by the notion. That's not me. That's not something I'd do. I wouldn't have the courage, let alone the interest. Exactly. She cracked a grin. But Jing? Yeah. Or if say, you decided to get with Evie one night, and it wasn't just a one-night thing. You know what, I'd be fine with that. I stared at her. I see, can we not complicate things, please? I'm not going to sleep with Evie. Yeah, but in principle. Rain laughed. And don't rule it out. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is I'm cool with this because it's serious. Wouldn't be the same if it was casual sex. That's my red line, Heather, the real one, from my heart. Zhang might be fine with you taking 100 lovers, but I ain't. Anyone who gets with you has to love you. I struggled to control my blush. Thank you, for being honest. Okay. I think I can deal with that. Well, that's my position staked out, Rain said. And we have Zhang's too. What about you? I glanced between the two of them, and my heart climbed into my throat. Speak, shaman, Zhang rumbled. We listen. Yeah, Rain agreed. What do you want from this situation? I opened my mouth, closed it again, swallowed much too hard, looked down into my lap and squeezed my eyes shut in an effort to get a hold of myself. Besides Zhang and I sandwiched either side of you? Rain asked, coming to the rescue. I exploded in a huge huff and rolled my eyes, but Rain's innuendo gave me my voice back. What I want is for both of you to be part of my life. To get along, to be with me, I turned to Zheng, swung round on the bed to face her fully, to stare into those slow, quiet eyes, razor-sharp and deceptively relaxed beneath her dark mop of hair. Zheng, you've promised to stay by my side, until I die. You found me and I dash. I had to wave down Rain's concerned hand, as I dabbed sudden tears from my eyes with the loose sleeve of my scaled hoodie, but I kept talking. I seem to be your reason for going on, I said, sniffing through the tears. I can't do justice to that oath. I acknowledge it. I value it. And I want to give something back to you. To respect your love. I'm not even 100% sure I want a sexual relationship with you, it doesn't have to be that way, I just don't want you to have to sleep on the sofa. I want to be able to hug you in front of Rain without feeling guilty. I want to kiss you. I shot a glance at Rain, burning with embarrassment and guilt, but she just nodded along. Maybe. I don't know. I want to be close to you, and have it not feel wrong. Zheng let out a long, slow purr. Simple acknowledgement and affection, wordless and perfect. I stared down into my lap, burning with shame. Why couldn't I be normal, even if just in this? That is one of the most admirable things I've ever heard you say, Rain said softly. Doesn't feel that way, I sniffed, clearing my throat and wiping my eyes. Gonna apologize in advance for this one, Rain said. But I gotta ask a real difficult question. Heather, how much of this is Seven Shades' idea? Oh, very little of it, I said, sighing and puffing out a tiny laugh with strange release. She wanted me to jump straight into a threesome, I think. This is all me. Zheng's chin rose, her eyes narrowed, and she shifted in her chair as if citing a rival. I wish to meet this godling that follows you, she rumbled. Sevens. I raised my voice to the room in general. Would you like to comment from the peanut gallery? Nothing. Dirty little voyeur, eh? Rain said. Quite, I hope she's not watching this, I sighed. Look, at the very least I want you both to get along with each other. At the very least. If we can have that, maybe we can find some configuration. I have told you before, shaman, Zheng purred. There are more loves than Eros. Yeah, but Eros is cool. Rain smirked. I rolled my eyes. Could we maybe start with a cuddly relationship? It doesn't have to be sex. Maybe not ever. That's not important. What's important is, I sighed. Is there even a word for this? I don't know what I'm trying to build here, us as a dash. A whisper of sun-baked bronze and fine-spun gold brushed past my ear. Family, she whispered. I flinched and turned, but the bed was empty. Nobody was in the room except us. Shaman. Zheng rumbled. She was half out of her seat. Heather, what is it? Rain asked, gone tense all over. Just a thought, I murmured, trying to process the notion. Nothing, I'm sorry. Sit down, please. I'm fine. It's nothing. Rain and Zheng shared a look which was a good sign, in a way, and a silent agreement passed between them. You know, Rain said at length while I was still gathering myself. Any great project needs a pioneer. I'm sorry. I blinked at her. A practical experiment. Blueprints and ideas are all fine and good, but you gotta make a prototype. Prove the thing works. We're not just dealing with emotions here, we're dealing with a practical problem. Zheng purred. You first, Wolf. As if I'm giving you a choice. Rain shot a grin, a teasing one, which made my heart flip at Zheng. I call dibs. Dibs on what? I blinked at her in mounting confusion. Rain, what are you talking about? Rain answered, but not with words. She stood up and I saw her answer in the uncoiling of her muscles, in the hand she ran through her hair, in the way she looked at me with a loving smirk. Oh, I squeaked as she took a step toward me, instinctively backing up as she drew closer, as she mounted the bed, straddling my thighs with a little grunt of effort. Be but your leg, your dash. Forget the leg for a sec, she purred, leaning in close, cupping my cheek with one hand. You promised no sex, I hissed, quivering at her touch, wide-eyed and barely holding myself up. Rain grinned. Kissing isn't always about sex. This is not about sex. It's about expression. And demonstration. My eyes flicked to Zheng, and found her watching with slow, sleepy-eyed interest, and I swear I felt steam coming out of my ears. Be but, in front dash. Heather, if you can't endure a kiss in front of Zheng, I think that's a sign to back down. Which is it? Wide-eyed, overheated, my heart about to clang and crash and judder to a stop, I managed a tiny nod up at her, and put my arms around Rain's shoulders. She leaned in and kissed me. She also kept her word. Long and lavish and loving, the sort of kiss that left me panting afterward, my eyelids heavy, my heart racing, but Rain kept her hands on my shoulders rather than roving anywhere else. She kissed me deep and hard and then pulled away with gentle slowness. She climbed off me and stood up, one hand taking mine to lead me off the bed. I followed, her and instinct both, numb and shaking and breathless, as she led me over to Zheng in the armchair. Zheng was dark and warm, and the tiny part of my mind which was still able to catalogue experience noted that she seemed as breathless as I, in her own way. Almost baring her teeth, the wet tentacle of her tongue playing about her lips, her breath rising and falling inside her heavy chest. Rain raised my hand high and led me over as if presenting me. It felt almost like a ritual, a rite. Real magic, blood and bodies transforming via contact, alchemy in the joining of heat and touch. And for a moment, in my wonderful new clothes, I felt almost beautiful. Without a word, Rain allowed her fingertips to part from mine as I clambered into Zheng's lap. Instinct took over and I felt like a kitten, purring in her grasp as her huge hands closed about me, cupping the back of my skull and the base of my belly. My phantom limbs joined in, squirming and writhing, trying to link with every part of her. Before I knew what I was doing, I'd stuck out one of my actual, fleshy hands, waving it and making frustrated noises in my throat. She wants you too, Zheng purred. Rain laughed, and held my hand. I squeezed. She squeezed back. We stayed like that for a surprisingly long time. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Rain held my hand. Zheng stroked my hair. She was so warm, like cuddling up to a radiator through several blankets. I closed my eyes for more than a few seconds, and Zheng started to scratch my scalp. Mind flexing for me? Rain murmured. Zheng grunted. A few moments of silence passed, broken only by the sound of cloth moving, then, nice, Rain said, admiringly. We should work out together sometime. Doubt you need it though. We should. Didn't notice when I shook your hand back in the woods, Rain went on softly, voice soft as if I was sleeping and not to be woken. But you run hot, don't you? Zheng purred. Love you both, I murmured into the pillow of Zheng's chest. You kissed Heather before, right? Rain asked. I could smell you on her. Plus, well, she told me all about it. Don't have to kiss right now, I mumbled. This is what the shaman wants, Zheng said. I felt her words vibrate inside her chest. Thank you. Hey, you're welcome, Rain replied. But we ain't out of the woods yet. A spike in Rain's tone forced me to sit up and disentangle myself from Zheng's embrace, blinking and flushed. Rain. They were staring at each other now, over the top of my head. Zheng must have picked up on the tone as well, because I felt her shift beneath me, muscles bunching and tensing. Might wanna stand aside for this bit, Heather, said Rain. Zheng grunted and lifted me up like cat, under the armpits, placing me down next to the chair and holding on for a moment until I got my surprised feet back under myself. Hey. I protested. One little problem, Rain was saying to Zheng. I just ain't attracted to you, Zheng. Sorry, Heather, she glanced at me. But I'm just not. I like my partners cuddly, smaller than me, sweet and clever and easy to tease. You just don't do anything for me, Zheng. Don't get me wrong, you're cool, I respect you. But we ain't a triangle right now, we're 2 lines connected to a point in the middle. She thumbed toward me. I'm not down for some top-for-top thing with you. Does it matter, little wolf? Zheng purred, unsmiling and focused. I feel no desire for you either. It does. I squeaked before either of them could answer. I said before, this is not my harem. Rain smiled and shrugged. There you have it. Zheng grunted, but turned to me. Shaman, you can demand comradeship, but not desire. I am not comfortable with the idea of being a dash. You know, the triangle is one of the strongest shapes, for building roofs, houses, stuff, Rain said. But 2 points of the triangle can just be resting on the ground, they don't have to be connected to each other, just the point at the top. I looked between them. I am being unfair, aren't I? Oh, dear, oh no, I'm sorry, I dash. There is one way, Rain said, and flashed a sudden dangerous smile at Zheng. We never had a proper fight, did we? Zheng growled low in her throat. We made an oath, wolf. No fighting. Then I'm gonna remain unattracted to you, Rain said. Please do not fight. I raised my voice. Please, no, it's not worth it. I accept it, I can't have everything I want, it's unfair, it's dash. I'd win though, Rain said. She winked. Easy. Ha. Zheng barked, and broke into the all-tooth grin of a hungry shark. You are good, wolf, and I respect you too. But no. Yeah, maybe not while my leg's like this, Rain tapped her left thigh. But once I'm fit again, you won't know what's hit you. I went around with you before, remember? Got a few blows in back then. Might surprise you. Wolves break as easily as monkeys. Not this one, Rain breathed, her face lighting up inside. I can go toe-to-toe with you, Zheng. Maybe we'll feel differently about each other then. Rain. I whined. I asked you not to do this, I don't want you two to fight. Rain shot me an unapologetic grin. Heather, this isn't about you. I blinked at her, surprised and taken aback. The wolf has a point, shaman. This is her and I now. If Zheng and me are going to be anything to each other, Rain went on, anything except 2 points on your compass, we have to do it our own way. You have a healing bullet wound. I boggled at her. No. Rain cleared her throat, finally brought down a notch. Zheng chuckled in agreement. I dare not hurt you, wolf. I will not hurt the shaman's lover. It would be an unfair match, I would be shackled. Oh, what's that? Rain cupped her ear, grinning. Who said anything about hurting each other in a fight? Combat presumes pain, Zheng purred. Yes, exactly. I huffed and folded my arms. Zhengyi, Zhengyi, Zhengyi. Rain sighed and shook her head with theatrical absurdity. Can I call you that? We cool with that? Girl, we ain't swinging maces and swords at each other, or even knives and bats. Even fists. It's the 21st century. We've got better ways to fight. Rain and Zheng fought with everything they had, right down to the last sliver of crimson, and I couldn't do a single thing to stop them. They loved it. Body and soul, they both loved a good fight. And to my complete lack of surprise, I loved watching them. You gotta learn to block air, Rain said, grinning like mad. You gotta start blocking air, 'cause I'm gonna keep jumping in. Gonna keep jumping. In. On. You. Ha. Arrrrrr. Zheng bared her teeth in a low growl. Little wolf, I am going to be the one jumping on you. Don't announce your intentions, blockhead, Rain shot back. Then I can prep, oh. Yeah. Ha. Rain got hit, hard. She rolled with the blows and came up laughing. That's more like it. I learned to faint in combat before your first recognizable ancestors dribbled down your great-great-great-grandmother's thigh, Zheng growled as she pressed the attack. Not like this you didn't. Rain went quiet and focused. She dodged all of Zheng's follow-up attacks, and used a technique I hadn't witnessed yet, a ridiculous spinning jump which misdirected the target away from the arc of her knife. Zheng went down, snapped her teeth in frustration, and hopped back up only to lose the round to a tiny toe jab. She grunted, the closest she could get to graceful acknowledgement. Rain raised both thumbs, and blew across them in the manner of an Old West gunslinger blowing across the barrel of a six-shooter after a duel. Next time, little wolf, Zheng rumbled, I will pin you in the corner and tear your guts out. And I will use a different fighter. I sighed from below the action. Is all the rudeness really necessary? Rain glanced down at me spread across both their laps with a smirk and a raised eyebrow. She was glowing with enjoyment, completely in her element, and my minor complaint felt like a reed before a hurricane, unworthy of being voiced. I was the luckiest girl in the entire world, to get to witness this up close and personal. Then she reached down and goosed my side through my pink jumper. Our Rain. I squeaked, trying to squirm away. Sorry, couldn't help myself, she laughed, and yes. Trash talk is an integral part of fighting game culture. Zheng and I, right now. We're bonding. Ain't we? Rain moved her elbow, her actual, physical elbow, in the real world of flesh and blood about 8 inches, to gently nudge Zheng in the side. Zheng allowed this liberty to pass without comment, which was true testimony to how far they'd come today. We are, Zheng grunted, but sounded vaguely angry about it. I sighed again and turned my eyes back to the television. With Rain's victory, their temporary virtual battlefield was dissolving back into the character select screen, full of tiny cartoon portraits of various anime girls and boys and monsters and several combinations of all three. I suppose I wouldn't know about that, I said. But then, that was the point, this was for them. Not me. They'd been going at it now for half an hour, and unlike Akarakish, this contest was not even remotely fair. Zheng had never so much as touched a video game before, let alone gone head-to-head against an experienced opponent. I'd breathed an actual audible sigh of relief when Rain had suggested video games, but Zheng had watched in cautious curiosity. Rain had turned on her laptop, hooked it up to the back of the television, and spooled out cables for a pair of controllers. Wouldn't it be easier to use the console thingy? I'd asked. Oh, this one isn't on the console, Rain answered. Can't we play the Alchemist game? I'd blinked in confusion. This was a lot of material set up for a single video game. The one with the substantial bosom? That's not even two-player. Plus, this is special. Zheng will like it. She'd placed one of the two black controllers in Zheng's waiting hands, the better one, she'd called it. Without the sticky triangle button, but I can compensate for that. You are disadvantaging yourself? Zheng had rumbled, her narrowed eyes flicking across the controller buttons with intense interest. Sunly fair. Least at first. Rain booted the game up and output the visuals from her laptop to the television, an apparently elementary trick that had me wide-eyed with surprise. I hadn't known that was possible. I suppose she'd done it before for other things, but I probably hadn't been paying attention to the specifics. She explained the basic notion of a fighting game, the concepts, terminology, button presses and moves, and not just to Zheng, though I was much slower on the uptake than Zheng. Let's not muck about in practice mode. You can learn by wailing on me for real, Rain said. Within about 30 seconds they'd left me far behind with invincibility frames, and quarter circle forward, she's a grappler, and press 3 face buttons at once when you have heat. Zheng only needed to see something once, hear an explanation once, and she was away. She was surprisingly dexterous with the controller too, far better than I'd expected, and she stopped needing to glance down at her hands within about 5 seconds. Better than my record at least, and I'd been playing much easier games too. Learning by doing only lasted a couple of rounds, until Zheng stopped responding to Rain's suggestions, and went for her unprompted. Wanna go for real? Got a choice? Rain nodded at the character select screen. I mean Shiki here, but you might like that one, or her. They're both up close and personal. Like you. Who is this big man? Zheng rumbled, as her selection hovered over the big man in question. Shoots animals out of his body. Good, Zheng purred, and they began. They fought the first round without settling in for the long haul. Rain stood by the bed and Zheng still sat in the armchair, but by the third round Rain had sat down on the edge of the bed, and by the fourth she'd scooted over next to me, legs crossed, intent and focused on the screen even when I thoughtlessly leaned against her back. When Zheng lost for the 5th time, she stood up all at once with a growl between her teeth, huge and threatening in the confined space of our bedroom. Hey, don't be a sore loser, Rain told her with a warning tone in her voice. You're learning, you landed that combo on me, you dash. You have gained a morale advantage, little wolf. Zheng jerked her chin at me. Oh. I pulled away from Rain, blushing and surprised. I didn't mean to favor one of you over the other. I was dash. Rain just laughed and ruffled my hair. You need some motivational heather too, hey. Climb aboard then. Rain glanced at me. If you don't mind, of course. And not at all. I squeaked, self-conscious at the attention all over again. But my self-consciousness melted away like spring frost in gentle sunlight. Zheng joined us on the bed, and I silently thanked the Say family tastes in bed frame sizes, because while she did have to scoot back a bit further, she fit quite comfortably alongside Rain, both of them cross-legged and focused as they started another round. I leaned on both their backs and watched over their shoulders for a while, the recipient of unexpected casual skinship between rounds or after another victory, Rain ruffling my hair, Jing reaching back to rub me like a cat butt. I slowly found myself drawn to the obvious conclusion, the one place I was supposed to be. With the possibility of sex banished for now, with Rain and Jing truly invested and focused on the game, everything made so much more sense. I could do this, and it wasn't embarrassing. Well, it was a little bit embarrassing. Unspoken, almost unthinking, entirely natural, I shed my pink-scaled hoodie like a protective skin no longer needed, and crawled around the front and into both of their laps. Head nestled on Zheng's thigh, legs draped over Rain's lap, I watched them fight. My inviolate realm had finally welcomed two others. I understood vanishingly little of what either of them was actually doing, what any of the button presses meant, but I could follow the action on the screen readily enough, and the action on screen was very pretty little animated two-dimensional characters beating each other up, sprouting claws, throwing knives, punching fire, bearing fangs, even if I had no idea how any of it was being achieved. I felt a little like a background bystander during a climactic fight scene in an anime show. Lots of flashy moves and very impressive anime ladies, and not an overinflated bust line in sight, but it all seemed a bit over the top to me, nothing like a real fight. Everybody involved should have been dead a dozen times over. One did not hit a concrete pavement and get one's skull crushed by a pretty vampire lady and then bounce back to one's feet as if nothing had happened. I sighed inside at the implication. I knew what a real fight looked like. Little Heather, terminal mess, can't even dress herself without freaking out, knows intimately the reality of a life-or-death fight. What would my mother say? Rain stuck with the one character she knew how to play at a high level of competence, a woman in a kimono, slashing a knife about, whose design I rather liked. She went easy as Jing tried out different options, different playstyles, but she never gave Jing the win for free. Rain always let her get a few hits in or try out all her moves, before making it clear who was still on top. But somewhere between rounds 10 and 11, while I lay in both their laps and felt like a very lucky kitten with my skirt across Rain's legs and my head in the gap between Zheng's thigh and the warm flexing hardness of her abdominal muscles, Zheng surprised Rain. She'd tried a few different characters by then: the big man, a teenage Japanese girl vampire, a sort of tiny comedic cat, and a mischievous maid who couldn't possibly be further from preem-like, but she settled on a madly grinning, evil-looking vampire lady, who was perhaps the entire reason Rain had selected the game in the first place. Her moves seemed very aggressive to me, big and wide and confident. Not unlike Zheng herself, perhaps. Zheng used her to take a round off Rain, aggressive, unrelenting, and with a sliver of red left in her health bar. Woo! But it was Rain who hooped at the end, and held up a hand. Victory, little wolf, Zheng growled. At last. Rain waggled her hand. Don't leave me hanging. Zheng purred, tilting her head. Come on, up top, Rain said. Zheng blinked, once, slowly, like a lizard. Rain narrowed her eyes and cracked a sharp grin. Don't pretend you don't know what a high five is. You've been hanging around wizards, not preserved in ice since the Mongols. You're not Captain Caveman. Zheng maintained her quiet curiosity for a moment longer, pretending incomprehension. Had a win made her aggressive? Or was she toying with Rain as one cat might with another? Being so close to the minor confrontation but seeing it from below, down in her lap, made it almost comedic. My phantom limbs tried to poke her in the cheeks and forehead, more amused than concerned. No fighting, I said, and my words emerged almost Lassie-like, a tiny sing-song that made me blush and wiggle and hide behind a hand. Yeah, what she said. Rain nodded down at me and squeezed one of my knees, stroking my leg through my white tights. Zheng broke into an all-tooth grin at Rain, a dragon about to ask a difficult riddle of its lunch, and finally slapped her own massive palm against Rain's hand. Ha! She barked at Rain's answering grin. Another. Sure thing, Rain said. You won't win again though. I got you dialed in now. Zheng had been turning back to the screen, with one hand lowered toward my head to stroke my hair, but the confident bite in Rain's tone made her freeze. I felt the sudden flow of tension in her muscles, the tightening of instinct, the sharpening of senses. Heavy dark eyes shot back to Rain, and a shiver of animal fear went through me. It wasn't a joke anymore. "Little wolf," she purred. "Zijing dash," I murmured, but she ignored me. Rain went tense too, still grinning, a dangerous twinkle in her eyes. "Now you take offense. That's what it takes. A little bit of shit-talking. Overconfidence does not suit you," Zheng purred. She placed her controller down on the bed and leaned towards Rain, slowly easing closer and closer. She pulled her lips back to show all her teeth, a maw filled with daggers that made my stomach turn over with both excitement and fear. I twisted and fidgeted in her lap, instinct telling me to clear out of the way, love demanding I stay where I was. Rain, incredibly, stood her ground, and withstood Zheng's predatory attention with naught but a raised eyebrow. "Dunno if you've checked recently," she said. "But I don't scare easy. Now, you want to put some cash down, make this a money match, then I'll be shitting myself." "And no fighting, please," I squeaked. "I don't think we're fighting," Rain murmured, eyes locked on Zheng's gaze. "Are we?" Zheng leaned in even closer, until their faces were barely 6 inches apart. Her teeth parted and out rolled 12 inches of wet pink tongue, slicing into the air with lizard-like slowness, tasting Rain's breath in front of her face. Rain's eyebrows almost achieved escape velocity. She let out a low whistle. "Okay, now I see why Heather wants to sleep with you." "Dang. Our Rain." I squealed in mortified embarrassment. She laughed, but Zheng didn't so much as flicker. Slowly, inch by inch, Zheng reeled her tongue back into her mouth, and clicked her teeth together. She let out a sound halfway between a tiger's purr and the distant murmur of a lost jungle leviathan. Rain stared back with manic joy. I could barely draw breath, I was so overexcited, panged with a tiny spike of guilt over how much I was enjoying the moment of strange animal frisson between them. Zheng's behavior was reminiscent of how she'd first approached me. Was this her way of flirting? Was she trying to decide if she liked Rain? Or was it challenge, confrontation, jostling for dominance? Abyssal instinct knew it was both. Finally, Rain's eyes flickered down to me for a split second. "Heather looks like she's about to blow a gasket, watching us do this. Can you blame me?" I burst out, then slammed my mouth shut and hid behind both hands, blushing and vibrating and making a sound like a distressed seal. Zheng's laugh was a low rumbly chuckle. She pulled back from Rain and let out a long sigh, like a mountain trying to decide if it was going to become a volcano. I peeked out from between my hands just in time to see her raking her fingers back through the mess of her dark hair, regarding Rain from behind inscrutable eyes. "A start, little wolf." Rain narrowed one eye in a skeptical look. "But only a start. Then let us continue." Zheng plucked the controller off the bed, and stroked my overheated head with her other hand. I whined and hid and felt exceptionally silly. "Yeah, continue kicking your arse more like," Rain laughed, and turned back to the character select screen. Zheng took another 2 rounds off her before Rain could adapt. But then Rain came back with misdirection, finally pulled out her full range of experience, and that's when the trash talking started. However much I might complain, it amused me to my core. The way Rain and Zheng sniped back and forth, skirting the fuzzy line between playful and insulting, the way Rain jeered and hooped, the way she stuck her tongue out of the corner of her mouth, the way Zheng focused, eyes widening with predatory intensity, baring her teeth at critical moments, all of it was delightful. Rain never treated me like that, never insulted me like that, even as a joke. I wasn't a rival. I was not a challenger. I couldn't be that to her. This was something she couldn't get from me. Cuddled up in both their laps at once, half drowsing in Zheng's body heat and both their scents, I turned that idea over in my mind, staring up at Rain as she bit out another smiling jibe. Was I jealous? No, not in the slightest. I was enjoying this side of her. Zheng was similar. To her I was the shaman, a person of transcendent respect. She would never call me a dung-eater like she did when Rain won a round without taking a single piece of damage. Her aggression shone through, but directed, almost friendly and warm. And this was so much better than real fighting, than letting them hurt each other for real. This risked nothing except one's ego. With delight came relief, that we'd found a way. I drifted on the edge of drowsiness, and asked myself the questions that mattered. Was this what I needed? Is this my anchor? And as soon as that thought took conscious form in my mind, something changed about the video game which Rain and Zheng were playing. The character Rain was controlling did a move I hadn't seen before, a sort of stab-stop pullback with her knife, and when she resumed her neutral pose it was subtly different. She was standing differently, holding her knife differently, with an oddly familiar smirk animated in miniature. Zheng's character, the crazed violent vampire, suffered a similar glitch. She landed a few blows which Rain blocked, and then when the little animated figure jumped back, she rolled her neck and flexed muscles in a way she had not done before. A very familiar way, as a huge toothy grin ripped across the tiny cartoon face. The two figures jumped at each other again, and their movements looked nothing like previously. Rain's character stabbed and span, sticking and moving, bouncing on the balls of her feet. Zheng's character grabbed and ripped, baring mighty teeth, leaping like a hungry lion. Both of them on screen grinned like maniacs. They were loving this. Very alert and very awake now, I stared at the screen in disbelief. Neither Rain nor Zheng appeared to notice anything was wrong. And then I spied, in the background of the stage a children's playground at night, beneath a crescent moon that a figure had appeared. Part of the scenery. Pixelated yellow robes and a mask for a face, observing the fight. I do hope Sevens saw my scowl from the far side of the television screen. And what, pray tell, is this little play supposed to teach me? I thought at her in frustration, angry at her for intruding on our private bonding session. That Rain and Zheng look hot when they fight? She gave me an answer, a practical one. For the first time in all the rounds they'd fought, Rain and Zheng drew. In a moment which I understand is quite rare in fighting games, their hitboxes, I later learnt from Rain, overlapped in such a fashion that Rain's knife strike took out Zheng in the exact same moment that Zheng put her fist through Rain's chest. They both fell down, thrown across the cartoon stage in slow-motion double defeat. "Ah, come on!" Rain called out. "Disappointing," Zheng rumbled. Maybe they couldn't see what happened next. Perhaps it was for my eyes only. Perhaps Seven Shades of Software issues intended it that way. The two little figures on the screen, one battered and bloody knife woman and one limping superhuman vampire, got up and staggered toward each other in a shared animation, then slumped together, each standing only with the other support. Arms linked, heads together, grinning wild. "Yair Sasana Kiraba Naranai," said the yellow-robed figure in the background. "Aitsura no Saishitsu Disu." Subtitles scrolled at the base of the screen, in blocky yellow. "You have to let them. It's what they are." I sighed through my nose. Let them what? Fight, for real. Heather. Rain said my name with obvious concern, and I looked up from the screen, caught red-handed. "You've gone tense. You okay?" "Something is wrong, shaman." Zheng purred as well. Her hand found my head, cradling my skull like I was a small nervous animal. "Nothing I could possibly explain," I said with another sigh, and forced myself to relax. "It's just really good to see you two having fun together." Fun. Yes. When I looked back at the screen, the yellow figure was walking away, vanishing into the pixelated background. "Let me lay this one out flat then, for my own benefit," said Nicole Webb. She wrapped her hands around the fresh mug of tea which Preem had placed on the kitchen table in front of her. You want me to locate an extraordinarily dangerous man, who we know from experience can wear other people's faces, who lives outside the law, can throw fireballs or turn people into frogs or whatever, possibly commands a cult of dedicated acolytes, and has committed actual honest-to-God kidnapping, torture, and probably human experimentation. Well, I stammered, but Nicole held up a hand. She wasn't done yet. Evelyn tried to sit up straight, frowning at old pain in her twisted spine. One hand left the table to rub at the socket of her prosthetic leg, through her comfortable skirt. That would be the long and short of it, yes, she said. And you can't find him with magic, Nicole went on. Because he's too well hidden. With magic. Correct. We assume. Evelyn sighed. Over by the counter, standing in defiance of her very real need to sit down as much as possible to help her healing leg, Rain shot a finger gun at Nicole. Nikki, come on, she said. You're the expert. You are the expert, Evelyn said, her voice thin with fraying patience. Mages still have to eat and sleep, and occasionally take a shit. Somebody buys food for him. He's an old man, he must see a doctor on occasion. He lives somewhere, I'd guess no further out than Manchester. We're not asking you to kill him, we're asking you to find him. And none of us are experts at finding people who don't want to be found. Nicole shrugged with faint helplessness. All right, what if he's gone off to one of your weird dimensions outside reality? She gestured at me. Ever think of that? Constantly, I muttered. Yeah, Lozzie hissed, hovering at my shoulders. Hope he has. If he's hiding outside, Evelyn deadpanned, then the problem solves itself. No human being lasts long out there. But Edward Lilburn is far too clever for that. You've got the skills, Nikki, Rain said. And we've got the need. Need a manhunt here. Tracking a fugitive. Come on. Nicole blew out a long breath, making a pbbbbbt sound as she did, and cast her eyes around the kitchen. What about the great hunter, hey? Isn't she supposed to be good at this? Evelyn stiffened. If you are referring to Twill, she is both busy with school, and I don't want her dash. Nah, not Miss Teenage Werewolf. Nicole waved a hand. The big lady with all the muscles. The dash, she tooted. Demon. Zheng's asleep, I informed her, though I left out the detail of exactly whose bed she was sleeping in. She's been hunting every night for the last week, trying to pick up any trace of him, and she's having no luck either. Please, Nikki. I pleaded. Even if you're not comfortable taking the job for us, could you suggest anything? Anything at all. Please. Nicole looked at me, and all her dismissive humor melted away. After all, I was the one who'd pulled her into this world. It was Saturday morning, almost a full week since Rain and Zheng and I had spent the afternoon playing video games together. We, myself, Evelyn, Rain, Preem, and Lozzie were all gathered in the kitchen, to ask P.I. Nicole Webb to achieve the impossible. The last 4 days had been quiet, uneventful, and saturated with deep unspoken emotional confusion, which left me barely able to concentrate on anything more complicated than losing myself in a book, let alone the strategic necessity of enlisting Nicole Webb's detective skills to find Edward Lilburn. Evelyn had informed me back on Tuesday, or was it Wednesday, that Nicole was now an exceptionally busy woman, but she would make time for us first thing Saturday morning. I'd likely forgotten all about the agreed meeting 5 minutes later. Bothering Nicole shouldn't have been necessary, I should have been able to solve this days ago. I should have been able to do this with brain math. I should have forged my anchor by now. Nicole didn't seem to mind popping round to the house though, and in a way it was good to see her. You seem different, Detective, Rain had said when we'd greeted her at the front door, as Preem had closed and locked it again behind her. Nicole had wiped her boots on the doormat and glanced around the front room, nodding to each of us in polite, professional greeting even as Rain needled her. Get a haircut? Buy a new car? Rain cracked a grin. Get laid at last? Rain, I tooted under my breath. Lozzie, draped over my shoulders like a plush toy, stifled a snort behind one hand. Haha, Nicole had deadpanned back. Nice crutch, Haynes. What did you do, twist your ankle doing a spin kick? Rain grinned back, brimming with smug satisfaction. Took a bullet. Nicole hesitated on a laugh, then looked around at the rest of us. Evelyn sighed and nodded. I nodded too, feeling oddly sheepish, as I was the one Rain had taken the bullet for. Lozzie directed a tiny scowl at Nicole. All right then, Nicole said, suitably serious now but a bit floored. From a gun. She held up a hand. Okay, no, stupid question. From a gun that I need to worry about? Nah, Rain said. Got it upstairs, actually, it's mine now. And the shooters come over to our side. Conditionally, Evelyn grunted. Miss Webb, welcome, and thank you for coming. Please do ignore Rain being an insufferable bore, and dash. Got a scar too, Rain spoke over Evelyn. In an interesting place. Wanna see my proof, officer? Wanna interrogate me? You and me alone in an interrogation room won't go well for either of us, Haynes, Nicole shot back with a tight, nasty grin. Evelyn boggled at them. I blinked in surprise too. Down, Preem intoned. That made Nicole jump. The doll demon had stepped back from the door after locking it, to lurk at the edge of Nicole's vision. She held out one hand. Coat. Nicole stared at her, taking in the hints of night Preem showing through in her choice of clothing. Her new-made uniform was yet to arrive, after being painstakingly selected one night as she had pored over options via Evelyn's laptop, so in the meantime Preem had taken to combining some of her new clothes, long skirt and tight sweater with deep dark eyeshadow and a pair of black lace gloves she'd picked up during our shopping trip. You going goth there? Nicole asked. Coat, Preem repeated. Coat, Nicole echoed, empty and blinking. Oh, right, yeah, cool. Coat. She patted her coat down for mobile phone and a notebook, extracted them, then shucked off the coat and handed it to Preem. Thank you. Evelyn finally recovered with a huff. Stop flirting, you pair of wild dogs, she said. Rain, I expect it from you, but Miss Webb, don't join in with her, for God's sake. Yes, Rain, I tooted softly. Be nice. Hey, I am being extra nice, said Rain. Nicole shot us all a sheepish grin, and reserved an apologetic nod for me. Sorry, I don't mean to spar with your girlfriend, Heather. I'm just feeling a lot less constrained these days. You know. Rain wasn't wrong though. Nicole did seem different. Between the casual gray jumper and the unremarkable jeans, the big boots on her feet and the many and varied bulges in the pockets of her long coat, the simple ponytail and the relaxed awareness on her face, there was very little left of Detective Sergeant Webb. She looked more like an investigative reporter, unassuming, camouflaged by normality, and easy to talk to. And don't call me officer, she added to Rain. It's just Nikki now. Nicole to you. Rain laughed. Whatever you say, copper. Nicole frowned. Evelyn looked like she wanted to twat Rain over the head with her walking stick. ICIB? Lozzie asked slowly, from right next to my head, still draped over my shoulders from behind like an affectionate boa constrictor. I caught the edge of her narrowed eyes, her suspicious pout, her serious little frown. Lozzie, I said gently. Maybe it's not the time for dash. It's always the time. Lozzie chirped, squishing her cheek against mine. You know what? Nicole said. Sure, why not? ACB. Shine on, you wonderful weird little person you. She held out a fist toward Lozzie and I, and for a moment I assumed this was some kind of passive-aggressive gesture, that I'd failed to forestall a confrontation. But then Lozzie reached out, slowly and distrustfully, like a wary cat, and bumped her own fist against Nicole's. Lozzie hadn't stopped watching her like a small animal with an unfamiliar intruder, but she hadn't raised any further objection to Nicole being allowed in the house. Preen had hung up Nicole's coat, Nicole had taken her shoes off, and we'd decamped to the kitchen for tea and a briefing, which hadn't gone well when Evelyn had gotten straight into what we needed, what we were asking for, and ended with Nicole staring at me, like a shipwrecked sailor regarding the remains of her ruined boat. "You don't have to be here," I said to that face. "I'm sorry." Nicole blew out another long breath. "Look, this is for your long-lost sister, yeah. Not revenge. Not territorial pissing. Not self-defense. It's for your twin. Tell me it is." "It is. We need the book he stole." Nicole nodded slowly, picked her pencil up off the table, and tapped her notebook with the point currently open to a page she'd stopped scribbling on when Evelyn had gotten into the uncomfortable details. She wrote the word leverage, underlined it twice, then flipped the notebook shut and looked up at us again. "All right you lot, if I'm going to do this and I don't know that I will," she held up a hand, "I'm gonna need every single scrap of information you have on Edward Lilburn and his possible associates. Everything, no matter how unimportant." She glanced at Lozzie. "You're his niece, right? You gotta spill some family beans." "I'm sorry, but you gotta." Lozzie shrunk down against my shoulders, cheeks puffed out, making a soft whining noise in her throat. "We have Amy Stack looking for him already," Evelyn spoke up. Inconclusively, so far. "No kidding," Rain murmured. Did I detect a wistful hint in Rain's voice? I glanced at her, but she was focused on Nicole. "Also, wait," Nicole carried on. "She's on your side now. We saved her little boy," Evelyn said, curt and simple. "She has a child. That woman, that stone-cold killer, has a child. Monsters have families too," Rain said. "It's not important right now," Evelyn grumbled. "The important thing is that I can put you in contact with her, if you wish." Let me think about that one," Nicole said, in a tone which meant let me think of a reasonable excuse to turn it down. "Is that all you've got on him then, one lone psycho out there trying to find him? A physical description, and well, his lawyer? That's it?" Evelyn cleared her throat. Rain shrugged. "That is it," Preem intoned from by the doorway. Nicole sighed, and started to shake her head. "What's it like being a private eye?" I blurted out. She looked up at me, surprised. "I mean, now that you've been doing it for a little while." A month? "Now that you're like you said, freer than you used to be." I cleared my throat and felt intensely awkward. Nicole was an experienced interrogator, she knew how to read and manipulate people, and she must have known exactly what I was trying to do. But she smiled and played along anyway. Perhaps she really did want to help, and all she needed was the right excuse. "Mostly what I expected," she said, leaning back in her chair. She put her pencil down and finally took up her cup of tea. She took a long sip as she gathered her thoughts. "All mysterious beautiful women wandering into your office on a dark and stormy evening?" Rain asked. Nicole smirked back. "I wish. Nah. It's slow stuff most of the time, which can be a bit of a drag, but I don't have a boss to answer to anymore, and I don't have to worry about departmental politics. There's a lot of slow time, lots of talking people, which I'm good at, I guess. Lots of following cheating spouses, lots of industrial espionage." She took another long sip of tea. "Lots of industrial espionage. What does that entail then?" Rain asked. I silently thanked her for helping this along. "Well, for example," Nicole said. "I spent 2 days this week waiting for a very specific dumpster to fill with some very specific unshredded documents. Then I bribed a dustman, and handed those documents to some people who are going to make a court case based on stuff in said documents, who then paid me money." She winked at Rain. "Can't get any more specific than that, or I'd have to kill you. I can do that now." Practically a secret agent, you know. Rain laughed. You can try. Nicole waved her down. I did end up joining that Cooperate collective over in Manchester, bunch of other PIs from all over this part of the north. Some of them get into much more gray area shit. Dressing up as plumbers or electricians and blagging their way into places, or straight up sneaking into office blocks. I haven't got the bottle for that. Yet. Do crime, Lozzie whispered. Gray areas. Nicole protested, but with a grin. Be gay, Lozzie whispered, even quieter. Sounds very fulfilling, Evelyn tried, a little half-hearted. Nicole shrugged. It's not like I'm achieving any great good in the world, but then again I didn't do that on the police force either. At least this way I might help somebody for real someday. And I've even got an office now, over in Manchester. Sort of. Only stood in it once. Not even a desk in there. Could pitched up there for the day and made you come to me. She broke into a grin at Evelyn. I do hope the building in question has proper disabled access, Evelyn deadpanned at her. Nicole froze. I think there's a lift. Evelyn puffed out a single laugh. Relax, I'm winding you up. Oh. Oh, right, ahem. Well. You are paying my advertised rates for this job, right? Nicole recovered with a cheeky grin. Nah, I'm joking, for you lot, this is a freebie. Oh, I spoke up. We wouldn't dream of expecting you to dash. No, seriously. Nicole waved me down. For you dash. I'll pay your normal rates, Evelyn said. Nicole blinked at her. I mean no offense, but you are a just university student in the end oh. Nicole brightened up. Right. You're rich, Miss Say, aren't you? For a given value of rich. And I'm not going to extract free labor from anybody. If you do the job, I'll pay. Nicole cleared her throat. Half normal rates. 75, Evelyn said. Okay, done. Oh, but that reminds me. Meant to mention a little something to you next time I got the chance. Before I quit the force, somebody happened to misplace the relevant files about your father's possible property tax issues. Some of those documents were pretty old. 30, 40 years, and nobody made copies. Pity. Dunno what happened to them. Go Nikki, Rain said with a grin. Nothing to do with me, Nicole said. Picture of innocence, she withstood Evelyn's level gaze with utter obliviousness. I don't approve of police corruption, Evelyn said eventually. Well, it's a damn good thing I'm not a police officer anymore, then, isn't it? Nicole cracked a huge grin, and was answered with a chirp of agreement from Lozzie. Let's not get too far into the weeds right now, yeah. So, you lot have tried to locate Mr. Lilburn with magic already, right? Involuntary or not, Evelyn glanced at me. Yes, she said. My ways haven't worked. Heathers. I hadn't tried brain math again, not yet. 7 shades of sunlight had made it clear that the next time I attempted to sip from the dark waters of the abyss, she could not be the one to pull me back to my feet if I slipped any deeper than intended. My anchor had to be complete, but I hadn't the faintest clue how to define a polyamorous relationship as an anchor of hyperdimensional mathematics. I might have tried, but I wasn't even sure if I had an anchor. Since Rain and Zheng had bonded over fighting games, I'd only grown more confused. I hadn't known what to expect in the hours and days that had followed, but surprisingly little had changed. There had been no great transformation of my romantic or sexual life. No revelation of how polyamory was meant to work. The biggest difference was nothing to even do with Zheng. I'd grown ever so slightly more comfortable in my new clothes. Even now, sitting at the kitchen table, I was wearing my pink-ribbed sweater with my pajama bottoms. Zheng and I had most certainly not entered any kind of sexual relationship. We hadn't even kissed. She'd taken to affectionately touching my head whenever nearby, and I'd cuddled in her lap several times, which was one of the most enjoyable experiences I had discovered in life, and I'd even fallen asleep like that one night, after which she had deposited me back in bed with Rain. It was cuddly. And I liked that. But it confused me. There was an odd distance between her and Rain, an undercurrent of combative looks and friendly jibes that convinced me Seven Shades was right. They did need to fight. Zheng had moved partway into our shared life, even joined us in our bedroom the last 2 nights when she wasn't hunting, sleeping in the chair like a huge silent sentinel, making me chew my lip in anxiety as I struggled to find the words to invite her into bed. Rain and her had opened up to each other, but the next step was impossible without their own methods. And that meant no true polyamory. No anchor. No brain math to find Edward Lilburn. Or did it? Not all love is eros, Zheng had told me, twice now. Did I love Zheng? And if so, how? The lawyer is the way in, Nicole was saying, tapping her notebook as I resurfaced from confusing thoughts once more. The fat man with the rat face? Rain asked. Nicole laughed out loud. Yeah. Harold Yuleson. Left an impression, didn't he? I knew him a little from my time on the force, if you recall. Indeed, Evelyn said, tight and frowning. Not the other guy who was with him, Nicole went on. Julian, was that his name? I'm not dealing with one of you wizards. No way. But lawyers, I can wrangle lawyers. I might lack certain kinds of authority now, but that gives me other edges. Any approach to his lawyer will alert Lilburn to our intentions, Evelyn said. Anything other than agreeing to terms. Nicole spread her hands. I'm not going to make an approach. I'm going to break into his office. Yee, a girl, Rain said. We'll make a cat burglar out of you yet. He's gotta have an address in his file somewhere, Nicole went on, leaning forward, getting more animated as she went. Even if it's just for a contact. A single phone number can be the first loose stitch to unravel the whole thing. Anything. You done breaking and entering before? Rain asked her. No, but I know how, Nicole admitted. As long as he doesn't have magical locks or something. Evelyn was frowning, obviously not happy with this plan, but her hands were tied. We had asked for expert opinion, and we'd gotten it. Look, Nicole said, obviously catching Evelyn's silent meaning. We'll make a deal. If I see a floating ghost or hear a zombie's moan or come across a spooky old book, I'll turn around and walk away and call you. How's that? Evelyn opened her mouth to reply. There's somebody else I'd like you to look for as well, I interrupted. Heather, Evelyn said in low warning. We said we don't have the spare time or energy. I think we need to try. It's not like I'm useful for much else lately, I told Evelyn, then turned back to Nicole. It's something we should inform you about too, since you were involved. Oh dear, Nicole said, all her enthusiasm draining away. I think I know where this is going. Oh dear, Preem echoed, sing-song style. Lozzie made a sad whine and hid behind my shoulders. Not all of the occultists are dead, Rain said, when I couldn't get the words out. Nicole blew out a long breath, and I saw her turn a touch pale in the face. I nodded. We saw one of them. A man. He recognized me somehow. And we got a picture of the number plate from his car. I'd like you to find him. What for? Nicole asked, slowly. So I can help him, I said. Or deal with him. Or vivisect him, whispered the cold abyssal logic that forever lived inside me, and would do anything to rescue Maisie. Or deal with him, Nicole echoed me. It was not a question. She did not need to add a single word. Her stare contained a precisely calibrated dose of skepticism, a micro-expression from a person who knew how to speak truth to power, without even speaking. If I have to, I managed, but I had to look away, down at the kitchen table, down at my hands splayed flat just so I wouldn't drive my fingernails into my own palms. I did not want to be power. Not for this. Hey, Nikki, we were gonna tell you. Today, after this, Rain said. We weren't gonna keep this a secret. If there's any more survivors from the cult, it's kinda important you know, you were involved and all. There might just be this guy, or there might be a few, we don't dash. Technically correct, Evelyn deadpanned. That is true, I murmured. So you've got some victims of that insane shit we saw, who avoided it. A tremor almost took Nicole's voice, but she sucked down a deep breath. And you might need to deal with them. I couldn't look her in the eye. Not because I'd suggested inflicting violence upon those who may not deserve it, but because I was keeping silent about the truth. Lozzie was shaking and shivering against my back, against the back of the chair. I needed to turn around and hug her, but right now I did not deserve that comfort. Not dash, I stopped. Lies. Tried again, voice shaking. Not necessarily. I might be able to help. Nobody deserves the eye. But if you can't help, Nicole went on. Then you deal with them. I don't. I didn't know. I couldn't say. I genuinely had no idea what I would do with a cult survivor, a human being with the eye still lodged inside their head. Would I try to help, would I extend what aid I could, or would I pull them apart in the quest for an advantage? Heal and save, or vivisect for information. Sometimes you gotta do these things, Rain said, quiet and serious. To keep people safe. Can't, Preem echoed. Nicole blinked at her. You feel responsible for this, Evelyn said. But you're not. I'm responsible because I know about it. What am I supposed to do? Forget this all exists. That any of it happened? Yeah, Rain said, nodding slowly. You get that too, huh? Sometimes you just gotta jump in. Can't let it go. Like an itch. Same as me. Nicole gave Rain such a frown. I have said it before, Evelyn deadpanned slowly, into the awkward silence that followed. And I will say it again, this time for your benefit too, Miss Webb. It is highly unlikely that anything more than tiny handful of eye affected cultists loyalists, if you will left that house before the ritual. They likely have no resources, no books. The larger faction retained those, and then I recovered them. Do you remember? Nicole stared back at Evelyn, her mind taking a moment to catch up. I don't want to remember, but yeah. So. They have no books to learn from. And I very much doubt they count amongst their number any mages, not on the scale of Alexander or Edward, or even Sarika. Remember the ones who were working with Edward? The ones who contacted Sarika? The ones with Evelyn sighed. Mr. Joking? Yeah. If they counted any serious power amongst themselves, Evelyn explained, they would not have thrown themselves on Edward's mercy. I believe that anyone with serious power stayed with Sarika's group for the final ritual, in hubris and overconfidence. Those who fled were the ones with nothing. Cowards and the powerless. And they made the right choice. What if that was a different group? Nicole asked. You ever think of that? Extensively, Evelyn grunted. Yes, I have run over every possible combination of factors a dozen times. If there's a second remnant of the eye cult out there, then they're nothing. The man we saw, I suspect he was as surprised as we were. The fact they haven't contacted Sarika suggests they're lying as low as possible. Sarika, yeah, right. Nicole rolled her eyes. Bastion of honesty and truth, that one. When did you get so trusting? She can't lie to me, I said, and I was not proud of it. Nicole glanced at me. From the look on my face, she must have known what I meant, and she didn't argue. She leaned back in the silence that followed, gathering her thoughts as I wallowed in self-disgust. You've changed your tune, Miss Say, Nicole said eventually. I didn't exactly have a lot of time to get to know you, but I got the impression you think of Sherrowford as your territory. You don't think these people are worth pursuing? Make up your mind, Rain said with a smirk. You want us to kill them or not? Rain, I whined, shivering with my arms around myself. Lozzie had gone very still against my shoulder. I don't know. All right. Nicole said. My priorities have changed, said Evelyn, hard and uncompromising. But do not think I have gone soft. If an ex-cultist turns up on our doorstep with anything but flowers and cake, then I will have them killed, no questions, no dash. To my utter desolation, Lozzie peeled herself off my shoulder and fled the kitchen, poncho flapping out behind her. I almost lurched out of my seat to follow her, but guilt kept me pinned. I'd started this, I had a responsibility to stay here. A moment later, we heard the soft patter of her feet ascending the stairs. Preem, Evelyn said, with a sideways nod of her head. Make sure she's okay. Please. Preem marched out of the kitchen. I knew she wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. Evelyn sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. Oops. Nicole offered. Oops. Quite, Evelyn grunted. My point stands. I will not put my friends and family at risk over nothing, over a group of people who are unlikely to be a threat any greater than ambient background noise. I will not march somebody I love into another trap. It is as simple as that. She rounded on me, scowling like a breaking thunderstorm, jabbing a finger at me. That goes for you most of all. I know exactly what you're doing and exactly why you want to make contact with an occultist. I stared at her and flushed deep, embarrassed red, mortified and horrified and seen, in the worst possible way, still. Reeling and mortified at Lozzie's departure. No, Evie dash. And I don't blame you, she snapped. But no. You are not to expose yourself to even more unnecessary danger than you do all the bloody time. We have a way of getting to Wonderland and standing safely before the eye, if only we can get that book. We are not mucking about with a bunch of cultists so you can peel open their skulls and root around inside their brains. I cringed, inside and out, and prayed for the floor to swallow me up. My face burned. My friends knew what I was. Evelyn could predict the lengths I might go to. They knew me. Oh shit, Nicole breathed. I get it now. You're not asking me to help with self-defense. You're asking for help obtaining a test subject. It's for Maisie, I squeezed out around the lump in my throat. It is. It is. Hey, Rain spoke up, sharp and warning. She grabbed her crutch from where it leaned on the counter and limped over toward me. Nikki, stop. Hey, Evie, back off dash. I will not let you do that to yourself, Heather, Evelyn went on. God knows you've stopped me doing worse to myself. Evie, Rain said. Flushed with the anger of care, breathing a little too hard, Evelyn stopped. You know I'm right, she muttered. Evie, drop dash, Rain said. She's right, I squeaked. Awkward silence descended on the kitchen. Rain rubbed my shoulders through my jumper, but I wanted to curl up and vanish. Nicole blew out a long sigh and cleared her throat and offered an apology, but I barely heard it. Evelyn offered none, and I did not expect her to. Who? Rain said eventually. Evie, Evie. Where'd that come from? From too many years of getting it wrong, Evelyn grunted. I am living for more than myself now. That's all. Well, hey, Rain said, quietly affectionate. That's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, Evelyn went on. These people still represent a threat, however small. If I could press a button to kill them all, I would, but I'm not sending Preem out there to walk into a trap. I'm not going to intentionally put us in another situation where we get split up and picked off. A few stragglers with no knowledge and no books and no magic are not worth the risk. I hope you're right, Nicole said. I really do hope you're right. From the depths of my pit, I spoke up. I still don't know how to deal with the eye, I said. You will, Heather, Rain said, squeezing my shoulder. You can do it, I believe in you. We all do. Fight? I went on, struggled to sit up straight, forcing myself to raise my eyes, no matter how guilty I felt. Or communicate. Or bargain with, or cajole, or educate, or anything. Even looking at the edge of it with hyperdimensional mathematics was almost too much, when I pulled Sarika free, and she was on the very edge. If I stick my mind in there, unprepared, to look for Maisie, I won't come back out. Not as I am now. I turned to Evelyn, made myself meet her storm-clouded eyes. I can't just get to Wonderland and look up at it even protected, yes, I know, and pull Maisie out of the sky. I need information, intelligence. I need to know it, more than I do right now. I need to understand how to talk to it. The clay thing in the workshop, I nodded at the closed door to Evelyn's magical workshop. It's not enough. It's not a direct connection, it may not even have been sent by the eye. It's taught me breadth, but not depth. Not specifics. Sarika, I already freed her, and from her all I had was the eye's fingerprints. I swallowed hard. What I was suggesting, I had no idea if I was even capable of following through. I need one of them, Evie. I need to look inside one of their heads, yes, you're right. But I have to do it. Evelyn held my gaze. Her jaw tightened. She hissed a wordless sound of frustration through her teeth. What if the eye is feeding them brain math? Or other things? Transforming them? I asked, throwing out anything I could to convince myself, but none of it was enough. I screwed up my eyes. What if I promise to go into this to help them? I don't care about that, Evelyn hissed. I do, Nicole said. Evelyn shook her head slowly, but it was not a gesture of refusal. I know trying to stop you will just backfire. Can't stop our Heather, Rain said. Very well. But promise you won't do anything alone. Anything, Evelyn said. I promise. I nodded. And I intended to keep it. And promise no vivisection, she went on. To yourself. Yeah, Nicole grunted. I promise, I repeated. But I wasn't so sure about that one. I really do need to talk to her, if possible. Nicole eyed the top of the stairs, where they vanished into the upstairs hallway. You mean Lozzie? I asked. Nicole nodded. Anything she has on her uncle could turn out to be useful. She sighed and took a sip from her second mug of tea, then shot me a sidelong smile, which could not quite conceal the wary glint behind her eyes. You'd be surprised how often some tiny half-remembered detail ends up being the loose thread. If she knows anything about him, I need it. An ex-wife, a house he used to live in, any children of his own, anywhere he used to work. Anything at all. I nodded slowly. I see. I see, well yes. Nicole smiled in the awkward manner of somebody trying to ignore a previously uncomfortable exchange, and took another sip of tea to cover the fact that neither of us had anything to say. I'd made that cup of tea, a second one for everybody, just to have some excuse to get up from the table and move my hands, as she and Evelyn had wrapped up another 20 minutes of complex strategy talk. They'd eventually agreed on a day for the plan to break into Harold Yulson's office, this coming Monday, along with procedures for contact, checking in, what to do if it all went terribly wrong, and how Nicole should proceed with his copied files or raided snack drawer, or whatever exactly the process would entail. I'd barely been able to listen. But when Evelyn had gotten up to use the toilet and Rain had decided that now was the perfect time to microwave some hot dogs for lunch, Nikki had picked up her tea and walked into the front room to stretch her legs. I'd gone after her, sheepish and mortified and not wanting her to see me as some inhuman monster. Heather Morel, willing to perform human experimentation, in my old pajama bottoms and pink jumper. I'd lingered by the doorway, with nothing to say, when she'd spoken up about Lozzie. Do you think she ran off because of me? Nicole asked after the long sip of tea, finding her voice again. Oh, Lozzie. No, no, not at all, I said, stepping closer, trying to feel normal. She doesn't like you much, I think, but she wouldn't run off because of you. She just doesn't like it when people talk about violence. Ah, Nicole went, as if she understood perfectly. Perhaps she did. I don't blame her, then. She is pretty young. She's very sweet, she doesn't deserve to have to deal with all this. I believe Lozzie is only a year or two younger than me. Nicole blinked at me. For serious? As far we know. It's complicated. Nicole blew out a puff. Still. And it's not violence itself that bothers her, it's the talking about it part. I did watch her stab a man to death with a scalpel once. Nicole boggled at me. Lozzie did that? One corner of Nicole's mouth curled up in a worryingly approving smile. Lozzie? The girl who makes weird noises and acts like she's a 13-year-old on a sugar high. I raised my chin, lightly offended on Lozzie's behalf. She chooses to act the way she does because it makes her feel right. I respect that. Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely, more power to her. Cheers. Nicole mimed a toast with her mug. Just surprised is all. She doesn't look like she has it in her. There's more to Lozzie than meets the eye. You're telling me. Is she? Nicole struggled for a moment, silently chewing her words. Back in the kitchen, the microwave made a ding sound and Rain started bustling about with plates and the fridge door. Does she have PTSD? Or? I sighed and shrugged. Maybe she does. Maybe I do. But I doubt we'd get much from professional help, except a very confused and lightly traumatized psychotherapist. Hey, don't knock therapy, Nicole said, suddenly serious. I've been seeing somebody for the last couple of months. Helped with the decision to quit the force. Helped work through some complex guilt. Nasty shit. But you can't talk to them about us, can you? I said, then added, with a little thorn of spite, or about the house. Nicole shrugged. Not exactly, but. My sister was kidnapped by a giant eyeball, and Lozzie was used as a metaphysical life raft, by something not unlike that giant eyeball. Although luckily for her, it was a lot less malign. Point. Nicole cleared her throat. It's okay, Nikki. May I still call you Nikki? My breath caught in my throat. Yeah, sure, course you can. I nodded, and directed my gaze at a random point on the floor. You feel awkward because of earlier, Nicole said. It wasn't a question. I feel like I crossed a line, I muttered. Yes. I'm horrified at myself sometimes. At what I might do, for Maisie. She sighed. Look, Heather, don't worry about it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually do it for you, let me think about it some more, but you lot live so far beyond the moral and ethical event horizon. I got no right to judge you. Yes you do, I said, quiet but firm. I promised myself many months ago that Maisie would not come back only to find me turned into a monster. Growing tentacles, dragging around shards of the abyss, hissing at people, none of that makes me a monster. Vivisecting innocent people, that would make me a monster. Evelyn is correct about that. I sighed too now, screwing up my eyes and cursing myself. But I need to look inside one of these people's heads. Maybe I can do it carefully. I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't take my request. I trailed off, still unable to meet her eyes. Nicole cleared her throat and sipped her tea and looked at the top of the stairs. So, Lozzie, she said eventually. Lozzie, yes, I sighed with guilty relief. Do you want me to convince her to talk to you? No, Nicole said quickly. No, it's not my business. I don't have the right to interrogate anybody. I just appreciate if you asked her. Hey, came Rain's happy shout from the kitchen. Food's almost up. Gonna butter some rolls too, you two want in? Maybe in a minute, I called back, then took a deep breath and straightened my spine as much as I could, tried to feel normal again. Just Heather, little old me. Lozzie would help with that. On the contrary, Nikki, I said. I'd appreciate if you came upstairs with me to talk to Lozzie yourself. She needs more contact beyond just this house. Plus, you might think of questions I wouldn't. After all, you are the professional. Fair enough, Nikki said, and we went upstairs together. I led the way, with the floorboards creaking softly beneath our feet. But when we reached the top of the stairs and I started ahead for the closed door of Lozzie's bedroom, Nicole paused behind me. Her eyes roved over the upstairs hallway, showing a little white at the edges. Nikki? Yeah. I haven't actually been up here before. Her eyes found me again, amused and frowning at the same time. You do realize how creepy this place is, don't you? Or is this normal for you? I blinked at her, then back the corridor, a space I passed through multiple times every single day, and after a moment I came to understand what Nicole meant. It wasn't too gloomy up here this Saturday morning. Some bright spark had opened all the curtains to flood the usually dim passageway with watery spring sunlight, but this served only to deepen the pools of darkness beneath the door frames and the shadows at the further reaches where the corridor slunk off to the left. The sunlight showed all the warping in the old floorboards, the discolored patches of wall through the paint, the strange unexplained scuffs on the skirting boards which I never thought about too much. Venerable, lived in, thick with history. Oh, I tooted. Oh, Nikki, it's just a house. It's a beautiful house, too. Much better than some awful suburban box made of particle board and plastic. A house full of wizards and demons, right? She cleared her throat, a little embarrassed and suitably chastised. Excuse me if I see far too many doors up here. This place isn't bigger on the inside than it is outside, right? I opened the wrong door. I'm not gonna find a drop down 1,000 feet of cliff. Not that I'm aware of. I admit, it might not be a perfectly normal house, but it doesn't do that. As long as the walls don't start bleeding. Nicole reached out and touched the nearest patch of wall with her fingertips, as if to assure herself it would neither bleed nor scream. They're nice walls. It's a nice house. It looks after us. On a rather silly impulse, I reached out and patted the wall too. Good house. You talking to it like it's alive does not help, by the way. I'm anthropomorphizing an inanimate object. I huffed. That's normal. Natural. We've been doing it for tens of thousands of years. Yeah. Okay. Cool. There's still way too many doors. She nodded at the corridor, then lit up. She tried to hide the reaction, but her eyebrows gave her away, as she stepped forward to join me in the patch of sunlight spilling from one of the small, square windows. She made a very studied show of looking out of that window, at the other houses and the street visible out there in Sherrowford. Kimberly still lives here with you lot, right? She around today? I kept my expression carefully neutral. Did you ever approach her at work? Nicole cleared her throat and avoided my eyes. No, I didn't in the end. When I was a copper, well, I had, authority. Didn't want her to see me like that, if I was trying it on. I'm like a useless teenager sometimes. No offense. I'm 20. Wouldn't mind scoring some weed off her. Maybe, see how she reacts to me. She knows you're here, I said gently, but she chose to hide from the scary police detective. I think that speaks volumes. Nicole gave a huge deflating sigh. I'm sorry, I said. Nah, it's not your fault that my type are also the type to not like police officers, Nicole grumbled with a rueful smile. Maybe give it a few months. Let the stink wash off. Excuse me for asking, I said. But are you only focused on her because she's close to hand? No, I'm focused on her because she's cute, Nicole deadpanned at me. And I'm not focused, either. I had a little fling a couple of weeks ago. It was alright, not very satisfying. Not really my type in the end. And Kimberly's your type. Yeah. No joke. Maybe I'll talk to her sometime, and see how she reacts to the idea. I offered. But no promises. I don't think she's into you. I don't think you're even on her radar. Nicole studied me for a second, practical and solid in her sensible clothes and tired eyes. I'd appreciate that. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. She cracked a long-suffering grin. Can hardly turn down your job if you do that for me. Oh. My carefully constructed front crumbled into a blinking mess. Oh, no, Nikki, I didn't mean it that way. I just mean I'll talk to her, I'm not trying to trade favors, and you don't have to do it, you don't have to, I dash. Nicole laughed softly, and reminded me I was in the presence of a very experienced manipulator, even if she was no longer using her powers for the state. I blushed and frowned at her, and almost puffed my cheeks out like Lozzie. She cleared her throat with apologetic shrug. I'll think about it, she said. And hey, I shouldn't be leaning on you as a romance therapist. Let's go talk to Lozzie. Let's. I led Nicole down the hallway, past sensibly closed doors and lurking pools of shadow. I paused at my own bedroom to crack the door and check on Zheng. Her massive sleeping bulk was stretched out beneath the bedsheets in the gloom, breathing softly. Shaman, she rumbled without opening her eyes. Just checking on you, I whispered. Need me? Go back to sleep. And she did. I closed the door again and found Nicole regarding me with a raised eyebrow. Zheng sleeping, like I said. Is that your bedroom? She asked. We have a thing going on. A complicated thing. Nicole raised her hands. Say no more. None of my business. When we reached the door to Lozzie's bedroom, I knocked softly and called even softer. Lozzie? It's me. Nikki is with me. Can we come in? A heavy mumble, a fluttery trill of surprise which made Nicole flinch and frown and a sing-song silver bell of, "You may enter," all replied to my inquiry. I opened the door and peered inside. There was never very much to see in Lozzie's bedroom. She hadn't put a lot of effort into making it her own, into expressing herself with posters or plush toys or treasured mementos, because she didn't have any of those things. Apart from her pastel poncho and the other clothes she'd arrived in upon her return from outside and her pink beanie with the cat ears that she'd picked up on our shopping trip, everything in the room came from the house itself, or from us. Most of the clothes she wore were borrowed from me. The books that littered the floor and the low table in the middle of the room had come from my collection, or Evelyn's study, or the library. Lozzie's mobile phone was a hand-me-down from Evelyn too. We'd thought it important she have one of her own, that she feel connected, even if she didn't go outdoors by herself. Before Tenny had hatched and joined her in here, the room had seemed oddly empty. It was the same size as mine and Rain's. The expanse of the double bed with its old iron frame and the vast empty space of the floor had always dwarfed Lozzie's slender form. But now the low table was scattered with mess dinosaur books and books full of illustrated animals, puzzle books and 3 Rubik's cubes and 2 chess sets, and an incredibly complicated 3-dimensional metal puzzle which Rain had ordered off the internet. It had come with special sealed instructions, and an invitation to some obscure organization, addressed to anybody capable of solving the puzzle without recourse to the instructions. Tenny had dismantled it in about 15 minutes and promptly lost interest. Rain had spent an hour trying to figure out how to express Tenny's critique in an email to the designers. Since Tenny's arrival, we'd added more to the room as well, a pair of comfy beanbag chairs around the low table, one of the old televisions which was lying around the house, and most recently, Rain's GameCube. Tenny was currently sprawled on her belly across one of the beanbag chairs, video game controller in both hands in front of her. Two of her tentacles were busy playing a game of chess against each other against herself. Heath, she trilled at my appearance. Ah. Ghost. Ghosts, yes. I smiled and politely glanced at the screen. She was playing more of the spooky game in the cartoon mansion. Spooky, she fluttered, then blinked her huge all-black eyes past me. Preem was perched on the edge of the bed, prim and proper and straight-backed, one lace-gloved hand stroking Lozzie's blonde head. That scalp was the only part of Lozzie visible. She'd pulled up the sheets from the edges of the bed and wrapped herself in a messy cocoon of blankets. Another two of Tenny's tentacles were stuck down the front of the blanket cocoon, presumably for hugging purposes. Ah, I said. Lozzie? No. Reply came from inside the cocoon, only a caterpillar-like shuffle. Preem, is she okay? I asked. Preem looked up at me, empty milk-white eyes meeting my own, and said nothing. Ah, well. I stepped over the threshold and considered sitting down on the bed. Perhaps this wasn't the best time for Nicole to question Lozzie after all. Something about our conversation had really upset her, worse than her usual aversion to violent topics and raised voices. Perhaps it would be best if you wait. I turned back to Nicole, and trailed off. Our friendly local private eye was staring at Tenny as if she had seen an alien. She glanced at me, then back at Tenny at the unexplained moth puppy tentacle person with coal-black skin and white fur and twitching antenna. Am I hallucinating? Nicole asked, slowly and carefully. No. I said. No, I'm sorry, I dash. Low. Tenny trilled at her. Helu. Heather, Nicole said, tight and a little unimpressed, still staring at Tenny. I would appreciate an explanation. Please. It's okay, it's okay. I blurted out, hands up. This is Tenny, it's fine, she's fine. Low. Tenny tried again. Two tentacles snaked out from beneath her flesh cloak and began moving toward Nicole. The detective took a step back, eyes going wide. Tenny. I tried not to sound panicked, I didn't want to upset her. This, please, Tenny, this is Nikki. Please don't touch her, okay? Please, please no touching without warning. Tenny blinked at me several times, deeply confused. I took the extra precaution of stepping forward and gently taking her pair of exploratory tentacles in my own hands, smiling at her as I did. Heather, what am I looking at here? Nicole asked. Not what, I said, firm but gentle. Who? Her name is Tenny. Okawee, Nicole said, very much not okay. Tenny, this is Nikki, I repeated. Nikki, this is Tenny. She's Lozzie's creation. Child. Sort of. Nikki, Tenny echoed, wiggling her legs and rolling on the beanbag. Nikki. Nicole was still frozen in the doorway, her stare flicking back and forth between me and Tenny. I sighed at her. She's trying to say hello to you, I said. Come say hello back. Don't swear. I snapped, and felt Tenny's tentacles flinch in my grip. Tenny, I'm sorry, I'm not angry with you, it's okay. Brrrr, she trilled. I turned back to Nicole. Please don't swear in front of Tenny, she's basically a child. And you're acting as if you are afraid of her, I put special, gentle emphasis on each word. Please come say hello. Nicole got the message, but she tilted her head with a "I cannot believe you are asking me to do this" look. She is absolutely harmless, I whispered. Which was true enough. With a sigh and a sucking of her teeth, Nicole stepped up to my shoulder and peered at Tenny. Nikki, Tenny said. Nice to meet you, Tenny replied in her fluttering, trilling voice. She wiggled her tentacles out of my hands, and hovered them in front of Nicole for a heart-stopping second, before looking sort of sad as she withdrew them. Nicole cleared her throat and gave me a look. May I ask? She opened a hand, at a complete loss. I sighed. We don't really know what Tenny is. She was a spirit, pneumosomatic life, and then Lozzie put her in a cocoon and she hatched into a real girl. Real girl. Tenny trilled, then laughed a strange hissing, fluttering noise deep inside her chest. She glanced back at the screen and resumed pressing the buttons on her controller. The important part is that she's family now, I said. Nicole shook her head in disbelief, then pointed quizzically at one of the chess boards on the low table. I couldn't help but notice as well. The whole time we'd been talking, Tenny's attention had been on us. She'd continued playing chess against herself with two of her tentacles, finished one match, reset the pieces, and started over. In some ways she's a child, I explained. But in other ways she's more intelligent than us. She's developing very quickly. A few weeks ago she was more like a baby, mentally. Now she's a 12-year-old playing Xbox. Nicole offered. Not Xbox. Tenny trilled. Cool. Important distinction, Preem intoned from the bed. Oh, for sure, Nicole said, suppressing an absurd laugh. She nodded to Tenny. Excuse my mistake, Tenny. Excused, Tenny trilled, and turned back to her game. PBBBBBBT. Alright, Nicole said, a little shaky around the edges, but doing her best hard-boiled detective impression. She kept her voice very soft. Alright, I can deal with this. I can deal. Please don't spring something like this on me again, Heather. I grimaced in apology. It's alright, Nicole repeated, still soft and gentle. I'm dealing with it. Tenny, I asked. Is Lozzie feeling okay? Tenny rotated her head to glance at the bed, then imitated Lozzie's puff cheeks gesture and slowly blew the air out. Lozzie grump. Not grumpy, came a muffled voice from inside the covers. Nicole and I shared a glance. She nodded to the door with a silent question in her eyes, but I shook my head. It was worth trying, at least. Nicole nodded once and stepped back to a polite distance, and tried not to stare at Tenny too much. Lozzie? I ventured as I sat down next to Preem on the edge of the bed, next to Lozzie's cocoon. Nikki had some questions for you, but we can do that another time if you're feeling bad. Do you want to come out, or do you want me to get in with you? I can ask Nikki to leave, if you like. She's not police anymore, so she has to do what I tell her. I'm scarier than she is. The blanket lump curled up tighter, but a small pale hand crept out of a gap to find me, flopping against my knee, like a huge deep-sea mollusk extending a tongue from inside a protective shell. I touched it and Lozzie held on. I glanced at Preem, but she was watching Lozzie too. Lozzie? I tried again. Are you okay? Lozzie murmured. What's wrong? The world is full of horrible people, she said from inside the covers, her voice uncharacteristically slow and limp. Horrible people doing horrible things to each other all the time. And family is great, you're great, I love you, but there's so many bad things and bad people and it's all so complicated and confusing and I don't want to think about it but I have to think about it and I don't want to. Oh, Lozzie. I squeezed her hand. I tried to go outside. My heart juddered. A flash of cold blossomed in my chest, a spike of panic. Lozzie must have felt that. Only for a few minutes, she chirped. Blanket Lozzie wiggled and wriggled and out popped her head from inside the covers, flushed from enclosure and pouting faintly, eyes even heavier lidded than usual. Tenny's pair of tentacles emerged with her, cradling her back in a half-hug. She wasn't crying, just incredibly down. Just for a bit. I just want to step away sometimes and go outside but I can't and I can't go and I'm stuck because the stupid hands keep hanging onto my ankles. And I want to show Tenny, she's stuck here too and she can't even go outdoors because she'll be seen and people will hurt her but I know places she can fly for real and not worry but we can't. BBBBPPPPTT, went Tenny. Lozzie, I'm sorry. I reached forward to brush her hair away from her forehead, where flyaway strands of fine blonde had stuck to her skin. We'll find a way to get rid of the dead hands. We will. I might be able to brain math them away, maybe, they're only. Lozzie gave me a sad look from beneath heavy lids. She didn't even need me to say it. We'd talked about it before. The hands were probably her brother. Or what was left of him. We couldn't even find Edward Lilburn, and he was very much alive and kicking. If we couldn't find a live man, what chance did we have with a ghost? But that wasn't the source of the razor thorn of guilt pricking at my heart. And in the meantime, I added, trying to cover for myself. We can always go to the castle, whenever you're feeling tired. I promise we'll always do that, together. It's not enough, she murmured. I want to go outside. To the real places. Deep down, in a locked vault of the heart I would never admit to owning, part of me whispered the truth. You haven't unmade the hands, because you don't want Lozzie to leave again. Heather. Lozzie said my name, her sad tone completely gone as she sat up, the motion dragging her cocoon apart. Heather. It's Trust, Preem intoned, and I almost jumped out of my skin. How had she known? She was right. Trust. I had no choice but to trust Lozzie. She'd gone outside for an extended period before. Then, when I'd been helpless before the eye, she'd responded to Maisie's call and come to my rescue. Trust was the only option, because the other path would keep her miserable and make me responsible, and that would make me into another kind of monster. Heather. Lozzie dipped her head to look at me from below, her elfin face curious and confused. I'll use brain math to remove the dead hands, I said, looking her in the eye. I'll try. Not now, not today, not until I solve the anchor problem. I cleared my throat. Not that you know what that means, but when I'm ready. I'll fight them. And you can go outside again, I promise. I won't be afraid. Well, no, I might be afraid, but I'll deal with that. A little smile crept onto Lozzie's face. She sniffed and wiped her eyes on a corner of her blanket cocoon, and then threw her arms around my shoulders, squeezing tight. I hugged her back, and dipped a hand to pat one of Tenny's tentacles too. We can go outside together right now, you know, she chirped. Like we used to. We can go through the gateway and then anywhere. Anywhere at all. There's this place with the biggest trees ever, as big as mountains, and the leaves are all clever and thinky, but you have to think around them or they get grumpy and then they say a lot of confusing things, but it's always nice things and we could go right now. I went stiff. Lozzie pulled back, smile bouncing across her face. I know. I know. You don't want to go unless it's dreams. I think I find outside scarier than you do, Lozzie. I'm sorry. The pout inched back. I know. A light bulb went on in my head. Lozzie, can you do a handstand? Lozzie blinked at me. Handstand, Preem echoed. Yes. Lozzie said, tilting her head back and forth like a curious bird. Could you teach me how? I asked. The head tilting became almost terminal. I was worried she'd rotate her head right off the top of her spine. Do you want to go to the park together? I carried on quickly. The big one near the university campus, with the oak trees and the children's playground. We can go on a weekday, in the middle of the day, so there's not many kids around. We'll get ice creams, and play on the swings, and you can teach me how to do a handstand. It's spring, the weather's been getting warmer. And you're right, you could do with getting out of the house some more. Even if only for half an hour. Even if it's only here, not outside. It'll be nice. We can take Rain too, for well, you understand. Lozzie did a very comical eye narrowing and puffed one cheek out. I'm not actually a child. Neither am I said, and I would very much like to go to the park. Lozzie broke into giggles and snorting and paffed at my lap with her hands. Okay then. Okay. Okay. On Monday? As soon as we can. On Monday. Can we invite Fuzzy too? I haven't seen her in a while and I want to give her a hug. I blinked at her. Fuzzy. Twill. Oh. Certainly. If she's not busy. Twill will be available, Preem intoned. I blinked at her. How do you know that? I asked. I know, Preem said. Lozzie gave me another hug, and Preem finally got up from the edge of the bed, carefully brushing off her skirt and standing up ramrod straight, hands clasped in front of her. She very pointedly stared at Nicole. Yeah. Nicole said. Questions, Preem intoned. Questions, yeah, sure. For a start, where's your maid outfit? Not going in for that anymore. On the way. Excuse me. I looked up from the hug. On the way, Preem repeated. Getting a new one, eh? Nicole asked. Not every day you see somebody pull off a genuine full-on maid outfit. Suited you. Looking forward to version 2.0. Questions, Preem repeated. Yes, I filled in for Nicole, disentangling myself from Lozzie and clearing my throat. Lozzie, Nikki wanted to ask Dash. I know. Lozzie puffed out both cheeks. She looked past me, up at Nicole. I was thinking about it while I was wrapped up and I don't know anything useful because my parents never saw much of Edward when I was small, because he was my dad's brother and they didn't like each other for reasons I never knew because my parents were gone before I was old enough and Alexander never told me things. Nicole nodded, taking this all very seriously. If she struggled at all with Lozzie's super rapid fire mode, she didn't let on. Any small details might dash. My dad was Richard Lilburn, but that probably doesn't narrow it down or help with anything, and my mum was Merle, and if that helps then good, but I don't want to think about them anymore. I'm sorry, Nicole said, and years of interrogation rooms helped her mean it. I don't mean to dash. But there was this house. Lozzie screwed up her eyes. It was his house and I only ever went there twice, and it was only when my parents were around, and Alexander never ever went there, and when he had to send people there they didn't come back, and Edward pretended they never got there but you could tell they did and something happened, but my brother pretended it was all okay. Nicole and I shared a glance. Lozzie? I pressed gently. What house? You didn't mention this before. Because I can't remember where it is, she burst out at me. I was only small. It was made of brown and red bricks and had beams, and it was pretty big but not really big, and there were woods but not too many woods, and it had a gravel driveway and a stupid statue of a naked woman in the garden, and I can't remember. I nodded all the same. Thank you, Lozzie, thank you for trying. I mean it, really. I can't help. Lozzie pouted. Hey, no, Nicole said, with a voice like the cat that got the cream. That is help. Oh, trust me, that's something. That sure is something all right. You know the place? I asked. Nicole shook her head. Not yet. But when I find it, then I'll know it.